All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and this is your Week 37 review show, the penultimate episode, as they say. And so leading off, how have we finally gotten here? So Arsenal and Man City are going to go down to the wire as we kind of expected, but they still had to do it. Uh, City got it started on the weekend, making a statement versus Fulham, and then Arsenal got the job done versus Man United. So no drama there. Arsenal weren't necessarily good, but Man United, at least at this point in time, just didn't seem like they were a team capable versus punish them. They were without Bruno Fernandes. That clearly showed as well. They just didn't really have any kind of a identity really going forward. It wasn't all bad though. I will say that. So there were at least some positives. When you saw the lineup, you're wondering because it was the same kind of back line that we had seen just for Crystal Palace. How would this be something similar where Arsenal would get 25 plus looks at Onana, and that didn't really happen. And I was struggling to see if that was more or less Arsenal's doing, or Man United were just legitimately much better structurally sound. They weren't always, they weren't nearly as open. It wasn't as open of a game, and to be honest, they were able to force Arsenal in a couple turnovers, and Man United had a couple breaks against them in the second half, and just a little more clinical decision making, maybe by a Garnacho or Rasmus Højlund got a couple looks at least in the first half. It kind of quiet in the second half. There maybe could have been something in here for Man United, but we just saw glimpses of it, and then we really saw a little bit of what maybe they could have been versus Newcastle. And really don't understand why Ten Hag has taken this long to play Amrabat again, because Amrabat and Kobe Mano, you have legs actually in midfield, able to cover ground, able to offer some protection in the back line, but also win the ball and do something with it going forward. It's been very weird how Amrabat has just kind of been shown the door a little bit since basically yeah, January or February. So uh, and the only thing you can say is Casemiro had the error, and then Casemiro played yesterday, and he wasn't necessarily good yesterday either, but he did actually have a goal line saving clearance. So I'll get a little bit to that game when I get to it. But really, the main drama did happen on Tuesday. So we always knew Man City had to still play Spurs. Spurs have been a very hot and cold team the last month or so. The injuries have started to get to them a little bit. Not having Richarlison has shown. Son hasn't really worked a little bit through the middle, and we did see a little of a different shakeup here, where Ange Postecoglou went with Mickey Van de Ven actually as kind of the fullback. Uh, and played Dragonson, and then played Sar almost like a false nine. So it was almost like a midfield four, really, with Sar actually as the furthest midfield forward with Son and Brennan Johnson to kind of offer some width a little bit. And it was at least interesting. It definitely cluttered things up in the middle. City did not really have a whole lot of joy, at least in that first half. There were a couple, yeah, they were mostly flat. There were a couple chances really for Spurs to actually break, and it was just a little off. So 0-0 at halftime, and then Spurs finally got the real big chance with Son after it might have been Brendan Johnson finally getting or it might have been Pedro Porro. Someone actually got a cross off, forced an Ederson save, and then after that, Foden was able to run onto a loose ball. It's kind of a Pochettino likes teams taking risk, and uh, it's either I forget who is on the ball, but someone makes a pass they probably shouldn't have, and the player in front, maybe it's Madison, he can't control it because it's hit too hard to him, and so he goes backwards, and basically Spurs end up losing the ball when maybe they probably shouldn't have, trying to do a little too much. Foden's able to run onto the loose ball. He's able to beat Romero, able to beat Betancourt. It might have been Betancourt. Able to beat Betancourt to a race, and Foden has a nice little cross ball into the box, and then Bernardo Silva was able to get onto it and sees Kevin De Bruyne, plays in Kevin De Bruyne, who had been quite quiet to this point, to be honest. Him and Foden had been, and then just square ball into the box finds you know who finds Holland waiting for it, easy tap in. That's how they get the first one, and then it looks like. Man City actually had some chances to concede here. Also, this game got quite physical all of a sudden. So there's been a lot of talk online that Arsenal fans think Spurs, basically threw this away. Uh, not not the way that this game went about. Kulishevsky had a cross into the box, and someone nearly. I don't know if it's on. It might have been Romero. Someone basically took out Ederson, going for a ball, completely clattering him out. And he looks like he'll be missing the next. He'll be missing, this coming weekend, and probably might be missing the FA Cup with a concussion. So. And then, someone went really hard, so body checked Foden in the first half, and basically, Betancourt or someone stamped on Kevin De Bruyne, and that almost looked like a pretty bad injury. So this game was quite physical. Spurs were trying here, and then they they really tried after what it looked like. Akanji had a massive mess up. It looked like Son was completely through on goal, and you normally do back him to make something like this, and just Ortega comes out and makes himself big and has a pretty big saves. Ortega had to come on after Ederson had his little collision. And Ortega made a pretty big save. Ortega actually made a number of pretty big saves. There was one when Kulishevsky looked like he was in, and Ortega had to do well to keep a ball from going through his legs. So this game easily could have been 1-1 or something else in Spurs' favor, and it wasn't. And at the very end, Foden had a really nice pass to play in. Doku had since come on in the second half, and Doku was able to basically get past with some quick feet, was able to get past Pedro Porro, able to draw a foul, and basically City do win 2-0. So 2-0, and so that's where we get to. City do control their fate, but it's not set in stone yet. And they do have West Ham. West Ham don't have anything to play for other than it is a David Moyes sending off. So do we see West Ham get inspired by that or not? I do imagine if Jared Bowen is in the situation that Son is in, I think Jared Bowen probably would have done a little bit better. Now, normally you back Son in that situation as well, but I mean that could be daft, but that's just kind of what I feel. So I don't necessarily know if it is just set in stone yet. So we'll have to, because people might look at that be like, oh, that'll be nothing. Well, I remember in 22, City had West Ham the second to last game of the season. I wasn't really expecting anything, and basically, I think they actually drew that game. I think Mahrez or someone actually had a PK to win it late, but West Ham have been able to have the surprise upset, and West Ham did get something over Arsenal, so that would be kind of fitting if that comes full circle as well. Back in December, West Ham went to the Emirates and either beat Arsenal, or I think they did beat Arsenal. Yeah, it's one of the few games that Arsenal did lose. So who knows? Who knows? This isn't necessarily all said and done as uh, being spoken about at least. So we'll have to see. So there we go. Arsenal fans, you still have some hope maybe. And then as far as the top four was official because of that result. So Villa on Monday was able to get a point versus Liverpool, well deserved. They were down 2 goals early in the first half or early in the second half after Quanta was able to make it 3-1. But they were competitive the entire game. There was a number of missed chances really by both Liverpool and Aston Villa. Really, it seemed like Musa Diaby and Luis Diaz were trying to one up each other on how to screw up a transition moment. But it was a very competitive, high flying game. Liverpool really didn't have anything to go for, and Klopp made some changes in the second half, and the changes kind of backfired a little bit. And Villa finally brought on John Duran, and John Duran came on and got two goals, and frankly, Villa could have easily won it late. So 3-3, 6-goal game, very entertaining. And that point, along with the Spurs losing to Man City, it clinched Champions League a spot for them. Making it top four and didn't need the extra fifth spot, which didn't actually come. I mean, what a story that is for Unai Emery, and really, I think that's good for the league. Good to have someone new to come in. Villa's owners did spend some money over the last few years, but really Emery came in and kind of took what Steven Gerrard had, who had them in like a relegation spot, and within just a season or two, just completely transformed what what they've been and what their dreams and vision can be going forward. And just it really is one of the more remarkable stories, one of the more fun stories in the season. Uh, there's been a lot of I guess how would you say uh, things have been kind of flat a little bit, kind of following this. Now you had the title race, and that was, I guess, something at least with the 3-4 horse race. But as far as just, it's been kind of predictable. Coming down the stretch, the regular relegation race has been kind of predictable, kind of lackluster, not really providing a whole lot of drama. Uh, and For Aston Villa to be one of those final four spots, when you think back to the first game of the season this year, they got destroyed by Newcastle. They started the season losing Tyrone Mings. I was really worried. I didn't know that Unai Emery and his high line. I thought they would maybe get found out. I didn't think they had enough depth, defense or attacking wise. Could Watkins be able to last the whole season? Amazingly enough, not only did he last the whole season, he scored 20 goals and he probably had 30 plus as far as goal involvements. With he had some assists as well. Just really cool story to be honest. And so kudos to them. So that means Spurs do finish fifth. So a little bit of a bitter pill in that respect. But you think back to how they started the season as well. They signed Madison, but they lost Harry Kane. Didn't really know what they were going to do. They brought in this coach that no one really knew about. To be honest, and Pochettino, I did have them first place at the start of November. I think it's easy to kind of forget about that. Spurs were actually the team leading the table at that point, and then they lost. They had all those injuries. They lost Madison. Then they had those red cards versus Chelsea, and then they lost Mickey Van de Ven to a hamstring for a couple of months, and so they really have done well to just kind of stomach the tide, and it's been a very good first year for Pochettino. And maybe it has fallen flat a little bit towards the end. They brought in Warner. Warner was doing well for them, and then he got hurt a little bit toward the end. Richarlison had a good year when he was able to go, but they missed him for too many games to be honest, and they struggled. I thought when they didn't have someone like him. They need a bit. They need some kind of a target man. They need to address that. I don't think it should be Son. I think Son works so much better for them uh, on the uh, on the left side. And frankly, I'm surprised we didn't see more Brendan Johnson through the middle. To be honest, I don't necessarily know if he really is their best on the right. I don't really know if Kulishevsky is either. But uh, so there's still a lot of room for the Spurs team to grow. To be honest, now for the last few games they were without one of their important players on the right side in Udogi, Destiny Udogi, as well. So for them to, they didn't fall flat. For them to finish fifth, I think is a lot of positives. There's a lot of positives for them to take it. Bitter pill, how it ends, but for the whole season in context, I think fans can understand that, and frankly, they need to celebrate that a little bit. They need to celebrate what they've accomplished and what Pochettino has done for them because there's been a lot of like negativity. To be honest, Pochettino did not want to lose to Man City, even though that meant possibly throwing the title to Arsenal. And there's this big tribal rivalry that goes on between North London and those fans. But at the same time, a parade is one thing. A parade would be annoying. A parade, or if Arsenal do win, yeah, you'd have your maid or whatever that would give you some stick a couple years down the road over beers. But at the same time, sports I think are about really what the future brings. To be honest, the future and present. You don't really think about the past that often. To be honest, it would probably sting for like a couple of weeks, but really, I think the future outlook should have been Spurs looking to try to beat Man City to go to next year with some momentum. If they had finished in top four, they would have had a chance to have a look at a different player pool to bring in. You would have had Real Madrid or Bayern Munich or Dortmund coming to your stadium. That would have been some memories as well. And so I think Spurs fans were kind of a little maybe let a little too much tribalism go into them because the even in the stadium it seemed like they started singing after they went down a goal or after they went down two goals. So I think a little short-sightedness, to be honest. Now, there'll be a bunch of people saying that's nonsense. You don't understand what English football is like or rivalries are like. They would I'm not going to say say something about like their mother's deathbed if it prevented Arsenal winning a title, but it almost felt like that online. Just kind of reading all that, and I just think if I'm in that situation, I'm wanting my team to or club to be in a better position going forward than necessarily hoping that a rival doesn't necessarily win in a year that I'm not going to care about in the next year. So that's just all I have to say about that. And so that's kind of where we're at. The relegation table did pretty much give us finally the most clear picture that we've had. It, these three clubs that were promoted this past year finally did give us a reason to talk about them, but it took until like October or even November when none of them had even won a game. I think at that point. So they all woke up after about January, but to be honest, they're all gonna go down with, like, 29 points, and the only reason why it was even somewhat close is, Nottingham Forest and Everton got points deductions, pretty serious. Everton got 10, Nottingham Forest with 5. To go down with, or to survive, I think Forest is on 29, and they're basically going to do it unless, they ship in, like, 12 goals for their next game. That just kind of says a little bit more of where these clubs were. Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United. Sheffield, one of the worst teams ever when it comes to conceding. Actually, the worst. Now we can officially say. And Luton and Burnley, likewise, just it never felt like they were good enough. Luton had enough offensively as far as goal scoring, but when it came to defending in the box, set pieces or just kind of crosses, they struggled the entire year. Burnley, it wasn't just defending. Burnley were just kind of playing into their own mess. They would just pass the ball away and have to deal with that. And so that's just kind of where we are. Unfortunately for Luton, really everything was set in stone after they lost Russ Barkley. So in the West Ham game, they were actually leading. They were leading 1-0. And you're wondering, could the comeback be on? And once they lost Ross Barkley after like 20 minutes or so, it just seemed that was all she wrote. They didn't have any kind of control in the second half, and it just seemed last time we were just able to push on a little bit more, and they couldn't handle either Sufal or Bowen or Kudus just kind of running at them, and conceded 3 goals in the second half. Burnley, likewise, had the lead over Spurs, and then in the second half just kept playing themselves into danger. And then at the end, Spurs didn't have a striker, but they did get 2 striker finishes from Pedro Porro and Mickey Van de Ven. And then so that's just that's kind of set it up where Nottingham Forest got all the results they wanted even before kickoff. But they knew had they gotten a result with Chelsea, it would have made things official. And they didn't get the storybook ending that they probably wanted after. But it doesn't really matter because again because of the goal differential. But it started off well. I mean, Mudrick got an early goal, and then Will Bully kind of canceled that out. But Forest were up. It felt like Forest were really, really, game for this game. They were all over Chelsea. They peppered them when it came to shots and looks on goal. Chelsea came into this with quite good form, so this was a bit surprising. And then all of a sudden, you looked up and Nottingham Forest were up. They were 2-1 after a very good goal by Calum Hudson-Odoi, a former Chelsea player. So that was kind of a neat little moment for him, and he didn't really celebrate too much with his against scoring against his former club. But then all of a sudden, Pochettino made some changes. You brought on Sterling, brought on Reece James, and Nkunku came on as well, and that was Chelsea just came alive a little bit after that. Sterling scored a goal from the left side, cutting across, similar to what Odoi did. Cutting across from the left side, finding the corner, and then Reece James came on and had a fantastic little cross into the box to find Nicholas Jackson. Nicholas Jackson probably could have done a little bit better earlier in the game, but he finally did get his reward because he had been quite good in that game as well. And so it doesn't. It's not the storybook ending for Forrest, but it's close to it. It unless there's an utter collapse, like you can get like an early red card in like the next game, and then you basically allow Burnley to score what like basically like 6 or 7 plus, and then Luton goes on and they score 6 or 7 plus. That's the only way to really do it. Uh, they're going to be Nottingham Forest is going to be back for another year. And then that's pretty much it. Palace continued their good run of form to end the season. Elise and Eze continued to start, beating Wolves 3-1. Brentford had some late heroics to beat Bournemouth 2-1, and then Newcastle and Brighton played to an honors even 1-1 draw. Probably a little kind of unsettling maybe for Newcastle because they kind of did control their fate to get top six to get in one of those Europa spots and drop points here and then they drop points versus Man United even losing. Now they've allowed Chelsea to actually overtake them a little bit, and then. Everton beat Sheffield. The Sheffield misery does continue. Everton beat them 1-0. Could have been a little bit more. Thanks to Corey. Cavallone was able to find Corey. And that's kind of it. And then as far as what happened yesterday, so Newcastle were flying, and they were flying because they were able to finally field Callum Wilson, last week, and then Callum Wilson had to miss games. Had to miss games versus Brighton. Had to miss games versus Man United, and they have lost their spot because of what happened yesterday, and because of what Chelsea has been able to do. Chelsea just keeps going on winning streaks. And it's not just necessarily Jackson. Cole Palmer really has just completely carried the team to be honest. And Pochettino has found basically molded his team around Palmer than anyone else. So that has been because in before Palmer was kind of trying to be played on the right wing. Now he basically does have his almost Bruno kind of 10 spot just all to himself, and he got a goal yesterday and had a couple of really nice three balls to play in. And then I think they got the second goal because Gusto was able to make a nice run down the wing and had a nice little cutback ball to find Nkuku. And Nkuku is going to end with, I think, 3 or 4 goals for Chelsea, only playing 3 or 4 games. So it's just a massive what if, what could have happened for Chelsea had Nkuku honestly been able to go. I think the idea was playing Nkuku and Jackson together. That was even before they brought in Cole Palmer. And the only thing to say with the Brighton and Chelsea game is I think that Reece James got a late setting off, so he's going to not going to be able to play even after returning. Not going to be able to play their final game of the season. I think he might even miss next season as well. So just not the most memorable season for Reece James, and that's an also thing as well. Uh, Chelsea came into this not expecting to not have Reece James for like 90% of the season, and they found maybe a gem in Marlo Gusto because of that. But it took a while for him to kind of get going. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how Pochettino is graded. Given all the lineup issues, all the injury problems that they had for the majority of the season. All of a sudden, you look and they're not going to finish in like 11th place. They're going to finish in maybe 6th. That does kind of change the outlook a little bit. Maybe they are going to get a Europa football, and that could be good for their squad. I don't think it would be a distraction. They've got such a big squad as is, and a young squad, and just they haven't been able to play together at all. So I don't think having an extra week of football would harm them at all. I actually think it would be beneficial. Also, it would help them when it comes to giving some extra revenue to come in. So that's kind of just where we are. And I mentioned Newcastle. Newcastle did lose to Man United yesterday. Uh, it was a bit of a shock, I'm not gonna lie, given how Man United looked for Chris Palace just a week or so ago. Uh, but Ten Hag did finally make some changes, and I've been wondering when would we finally see something like that? So he did something, drastic almost. He had Bruno Fernandes able to go, and he didn't just give Bruno his free role. He played basically McTominay and Bruno almost behind Bruno. So McTominay was kind of like the number 10, but then McTominay would go forward and kind of he would be your striker. But what he did was he sat Rasmus Højlund, and then what he really did is he started playing Amrabat and Kobe Mainoo together. And Amrabat, sits. He recognizes his role is to not necessarily be someone with the ball, to actually just take up space essentially. and it allows Mano to go a little more to be more a little advanced in the final third. And lo and behold, he showed up with a goal, and Amrabat showed up with a massive kind of he stopped a transition yesterday, and basically I think he stopped two transitions actually. One probably should have been called for a PK, but it wasn't. But it's just you finally had some recovery legs in the midfield. It wasn't as easy for Newcastle to bully Man United in that central area, and just you wonder why hasn't Ten Hag done this more? He's been trying, McTominay and Mano. He's been trying, Casemiro and Mano. He's been trying Ericsson and Mano. Just you haven't seen Amrabat for so long, and you just wonder why. You always had him, and it's not necessarily like he hasn't been fit for it. So that has been surprising. So that's just where we are for the rundown, and then I will get started with the kind of deeper dive with uh, Man City and Spurs. Just kind of what happened on Tuesday with Holland getting the two goals, one being a PK. Uh, First off, with Tottenham, with Aston Villa drawing versus Liverpool, it did open the door still. So they still had something to play for, and I do think Champions League would have been massive for revenue streams as well. You have to think about that with their owner, better chance to target a player. So yeah, I get you would handed possibly the title to your rival Arsenal, but I just think I think it would have been I think that's been overblown. But I possibly could be wrong. But basically, another thing too is what happens if City actually do flop versus West Ham? All of your celebrating and whatnot for your misery, it all is nothing. You should just you should control what you can control. In my opinion, if Arsenal do go on to win the title, it won't necessarily be because of Spurs beating Man City. It would be for other reasons. But it is what it is, and with Man City, there was no Richarlison for Spurs, no Udogie for Spurs. Man City, though, have were yet to score in the stadium, at least for an EPL game. I think they finally got their opening goal versus earlier this year in the FA Cup, but that goal came up late as well. I think that was just on a corner kick, just a late corner kick. So Spurs have struggled in the stadium, and they struggled again. And the one thing I was starting to wonder, because I saw it a little bit versus Fulham, is Pep has started to relatively have a consistent lineup, and what he's done is it's Coach Kovacic next to Rodri, so Rodri has a little bit more protection, and then Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden almost like double tens. Phil Foden is sometimes asked to kind of be on the left side, but really he's playing next to Kevin De Bruyne as that 10 role, and then Gvardiol really is the kind of their left winger in most parts. And then you have Holland just kind of being by himself, and then you have Bernardo Silva just kind of being on the right side. And the only thing I was wondering about is at times City just do not have anyone on that left side other than Gvardiol. I was wondering because of the way that Spurs were setting up. Spurs played with basically Bengor, Horberg, Madison, and Sarr just to clog that central space. Pedro Porro was playing inside as well. Mickey Van de Ven as well. They did not care about marking the sides of the field at all. And so, in a way, by Foden kind of playing inside, Bernardo Silva as well, you only had Walker and Gvardiol to be your outlets, and they didn't care when Walker got free and had some crosses off. They were fine with that. They didn't care when Gvardiol did as well. And I was wondering, was it maybe a mistake not to play someone like a Dion Doku just to start the game? But that would have meant sitting your pride and joy in Phil Foden. And the one thing I was wondering about is it's not going to maybe matter this season, but going forward, it might have to be an either or with Kevin De Bruyne or a Phil Foden, maybe not both at the same time. We'll have to see if that becomes a storyline next year. Kevin De Bruyne has started to look his age a little bit. Now he took forever to actually get his season going because of the injury, and he's within like 3 or 4 months of football, he already was almost leading the league in assists. Maybe he is leading the league in assists after, since January. So it's not necessarily like Kevin De Bruyne is done. I'm not going to say that, but just he has looked his age, in some respects. There've been a couple of times when it looked like he probably could have made a run, when Holland had dropped deep, and he was doing stuff like this last year. He wasn't able to do it this year. And just it seems like Phil Foden has a little bit more better control, playing in that central area. I don't think he really works on either on the wing, either the right wing or the left wing, because he leaves that space to just kind of go wherever he can get the ball. But when he does that, and he's good, turning with it and carrying it, it's not the end of the world. But when he does that, that does allow teams to not really have to mark that area. So it does give you a different kind of a dynamic. But uh, so as far as the match timeline, there was early chance for Spurs. There's a Betancourt shot where they're able to go long and catch Gvardiol a little bit. I think it's Brendan Johnson finally gets a pretty good nice cross off, finds Betancourt wide open in the box, and Betancourt gets a good shot. It's an Ederson save, but if he picks a corner, maybe this goes in. And then there were a couple of chances for City where Walker was getting free. Then Kevin De Bruyne had a shot that barely missed. And then there was another time where Walker was free, getting behind Van de Ven, but the cross was a little off. And then there was a little bit of a mess up where Vicario has to make a big stop on Foden. This is just Spurs playing from the back. Early giveaway as well. And Foden gets a decent shot off. Just it's a pretty good save by Vicario. And then we have a couple decent counter moments, but nothing really materializes. And then City have a chance late, but Dragishin has a block on Bernardo Silva. So where we are at halftime, it's a 0-0. I did think it was an interesting lineup because Pochettino has been trying to figure out what the heck to do on that left back. It hasn't really worked. He tried Oliver Skip versus Burnley. He didn't really like that. Skip did something decent versus Liverpool in the second half, but didn't really work for Burnley. It was interesting to see Dragic play through the middle and Van de Ven actually as their left back. Uh, and they weren't really because Big Van de Ven wasn't really necessarily playing left back either. He was just kind of playing next to Dragic, and just they were making it really hard for Holland to receive the ball in the middle of the field, essentially. The interesting thing though was when you saw the lineup or the graphic, people thought it was going to be Madison playing almost as the false nine, having the more advanced role. Madison had the deeper role, and this was a genius move because Madison was doing quite well to receive the ball deeper. Uh, City would have numbers kind of near him, trying to get him to turn over. And Madison was doing quite well to keep it under pressure, find teammates, whether or not through the pass or with the carry. Was very well being press resistant, and they were able to find those spaces, able to find those gaps where you could exploit a little bit. Sar was doing well, centrally, or you're doing well in more of the forward position as well. So I for the most part, I liked what I was seeing, but at the same time, it's not really like they forced Ederson into a lot of saves. So there was a lot of good stuff that Spurs were doing, but a lot of this good stuff was far away from the City goal. So that was like the only negative. There'd be so many times when Sarr would have the ball, or Madison, or even a Johnson, and just Son would be just too far away from the goal. There would never be someone running with them, through the center, to maybe square a ball to, or to really look at into the box, and they were desperately missing a striker. That really has been just the theme of their season the last month or so. That's kind of the reason why they've had their slip. Now they've had some injuries as well, but I do think it's not having Charleston, it's not having that striker that really has hurt them. Um, and with Man City, the note I had was I thought Kevin De Bruyne and Foden were giving spacing issues because it was so cluttered. Someone like a Doku would have, or even a Grealish, would have at least forced you to cover at that far side, and they just really weren't. The other side was Kyle Walker was the one getting the ball and in the most of the areas in the first half. That's not really someone you want if you're or if you're a someone that's rooting against Man City, that's probably what you want because he's not going to be someone that really threatens you unless he has an amazing cross. And he wasn't really able to pick anyone out. Uh, and then Son, after being really quiet, does nearly score to start the second half. So the second half starts off quite well. Spurs a little bit better. Brendan Johnson again able to get the ball. It was interesting to see him picked over Kulishevsky. I liked the idea, to be honest. And there were a couple of times when he did get the better of Gvardiol. So it's a really good cross here. And Son Son tries to get a little bit of a flick. I think Ederson does well just to come out, and it's a pretty good save because this easily could have gotten past him because it hits Ederson just really quickly. It's one of those kind of like flick reaction kind of saves. Uh, so it looked like Spurs actually had momentum, and then lo and behold, 1-0 Holland. And it starts with just Spurs trying to do a little too much, too little, yeah, just too much at all at once. Really, uh, someone it's either Van de Ven or it might even be Dragic just plays a terrible ball into I think it is Betancourt. Betancourt tries to collect it. He does, but he can't control it entirely. He has to go backwards, and I think it's Christian Romero who's now on the left or right side, and Romero isn't able to control that touch, and then Foden's able to basically beat him in a sprint, and then he's able to beat Betancourt as well. Uh, now you could say if this was a game where it was like a title decider and its Spurs were the team that was fighting for the title, maybe here Romero or Betancourt do a little bit better because I do think it's lackadaisical by both. There's a chance here to foul Foden and maybe eat a yellow card and stop Foden from being able to just run past you and get across into the box. Uh, but there's still ways to prevent it even then. The ball comes in, it doesn't really find anyone. It finds Bernardo Silva, uh, and Bernardo Silva is able to see that Kevin De Bruyne is kind of eating a little bit with Mickey Van de Ven. Van de Ven is more focused on the ball than necessarily De Bruyne, and it's just an easy three ball. De Bruyne is apparently on sides, and I'm surprised they didn't really look at that, but apparently he was. It looked even, but at the same time, we've seen VAR look at people's breath this entire season. Even doesn't necessarily mean anything anymore. But anyways, they didn't look at it, so it doesn't matter. And then De Bruyne just does what he does. You need someone in that situation to play the right final ball, and that is what he's better than anyone else in the world at applying that final ball. It looks easy, but at the same time, I've just as a fan of football this entire season, I've seen my team screw up that kind of pass the entire year. And if you get it right, it's an easy tap in goal. Sometimes you see people in that situation just kind of go for goal themselves, go for the glory themselves, and he just knows Holland's always going to be there, and he gets he all he has to do is just get the ball uh, past Vicario, get the ball where he doesn't necessarily hit the keeper. Yesterday I was watching the Chelsea game versus Brighton. Nicholas Jackson had the almost a similar kind of basically square pass, and he just got it entirely wrong. So it's still you still have to actually get the pass right, and you have to hit it hard, but not hit it too hard where it gets to a point where the striker can't control it. So it's just what he is. He provides the final ball, and that is what you need. Uh, and it's funny because the note I had was I thought Kevin De Bruyne and Foden were both kind of gashed a little bit in the first half, but when you need them in moments, they provide it for you. I thought Foden was quite poor versus Fulham on the weekend, and then lo and behold, he just shows up and he has the key goal to get that second goal lead, and then at that point, Fulham were on the ropes. Uh, and it's also fitting too because Holland is there and he's always going to be there in the box. Man City always have a number 9 that is going to be there in the box, and it just seems the game, for some odd reason, has decided to go away from strikers being finishers, being box poachers, essentially. There's all this idea, and for the longest time, Pep was this kind of coach. He was playing Bernardo Silva. He would be playing, Gundogan. He was just playing, these other like false nines, kind of players. Pep's finally gone out and gotten a number 9. Now he is the best number 9 in the world. Yeah, it's not really like it's you don't need to praise him that much, but at the same time, he has gone out and gotten this where there are teams that are trying to do this with not players that would be in this position essentially. Spurs would be a good example. If Brendan Johnson gets that kind of opportunity, he does a square ball. I don't think Son or anyone else is going to be there because you have to recognize, you have to have the instinct to always be there as well. It's not just being there. Yes, it's a tap in, but the work happens before that. The work happens in you having the positional awareness to be in the right spot when the cross comes. And just for a lot of reasons, I can't explain it. A lot of teams have tried to go away from this. Real Madrid would be a good example as well. They've tried the whole season trying Jude Bellingham to try to fit in there, and Bellingham has had a good season, had a great season. Getting the goals he's had, but when it came to the final moments, the reason why they're in the Champions League final is they brought in a guy with that kind of instinct. Uh, in Hosselu. So I'm surprised we haven't seen more and more teams, or we have seen more and more teams just go away from that, to be honest. But and Man City, if they do win, you could simply be they had someone like a Holland that would be in that situation where maybe someone like a uh, Havertz, if Havertz is in that situation, is he going to be there for Arsenal? Uh, I don't really know. I don't think Jesus would. I will say that if Gabriel Jesus is in that situation, I don't think he's there. I think he's too far behind the play. So uh, if the title does come down to that, I think that could be what actually does it. And the only reason why I think Arsenal have actually been able to push City hasn't been Havertz. People are going to try to push that. I think it's Arteta finally started playing Trossard. Trossard is actually one of those that does recognize when to be in the box. But I don't have to do that right now. So we get here 1-0. Ange finally makes some changes. So he brings off Betancourt. Betancourt didn't like that. He had a little meltdown. And then Kulusevski comes on. And then Kulusevski actually does get a couple chances. So there's one that he forces Ortega to have a leg save, and then there's a Diaz mistake. This actually could have been just as bad as the Akanji one. Kulusevski is near the goal, but that one is saved as well. And again, it's quite well by Ortega actually having the awareness to come out. So, uh, but even before that, the injury crisis has happened. So the first one is Kevin De Bruyne is stamped on. It looked like he'd maybe not be able to go versus West Ham, but Pep said he'll be okay. And then Ederson is clattered into by Romero, and this one did look quite bad. It looked bad in real time, and then for some reason Ederson was able to play for the next 5 minutes, and then he was finally taken out. I think that was quite bad, both by City and the actual EPL to not. And they said it wasn't for a concussion protocol, but it looked like he was unconscious for a little bit. So I didn't think that was necessarily great, and Ortega had to come in and come in and work. Had to make some pretty big saves to save them. And the biggest one did come with Son. Son was through on goal, and he just couldn't score. There's just Man City can't have that Gerard slip moment for some reason. Unfortunately for Arsenal fans, I guess. Uh, but it really isn't a massive Ortega save. You can't say enough about it. And that's another thing too. Man City have had to actually do this without Ederson for a little bit. Ederson got hurt versus Liverpool. I think even in that Arsenal game, Ortega played. Ortega played for like 2 months or so, uh, and they were without Holland. They were without Ederson for a little of this. They were without Kevin De Bruyne for like five months. So Man City have been able to get by with a little of I wouldn't say drama, but I guess some not necessarily controversy. Uh, uh, sh I'll think of the I'll think of the remote. Just Man City had a little stuff to I guess get through, um, and then Doku was able to create the PK to make it 2-0. It's an incredible ball by Phil Foden. That is another thing too. Foden finally has found the spot in his game to actually play people in because this is something that Kevin De Bruyne would have done just to see that when the space is there and actually to play the pass. This is an amazing feed by Foden here. So you're seeing how his game has evolved as well, and then Doku does what Doku does. Someone like Grealish, I think, probably holds onto the ball. Doku is a little more direct. Takes on Pedro Porro and has the quick feed to get by him, draws the foul, and then Holland's able to convert it. So I mean, it's just that Son chance really was really was wild because you really did expect him to put it away, but it wasn't. I mean, the game was interesting in a sense that just Man City weren't good. Man City with only 8 shots and five on target. Spurs with 10 and 5. It was similar to what uh, Man City similar to I guess the Champions League final versus Inter, where City only I think had like 8 shots or 7 shots in that game as well, and Akanji had a mess up in that game as well. So they relied a little bit on the other team to not necessarily put it away. City had to make 6 saves, and Spurs outpossessed Man City. I wasn't expecting that either. 53 to 47. Uh, the Spurs set up to have a lot of ball, and they passed it around. They weren't necessarily going long. They were being brave with it. Man City were trying to get them to turn it over, and again, the one thing you can say here is you can play this way and still somewhat be pragmatic. I guess you can say. Whereas Arsenal went to the Emirates, they only had 199 passes. I think they had 6 shots total, only 2 on target. it wasn't the same. And I do think, if it does come down to that, I think Arteta's gonna regret that. I think Arteta's also gonna regret maybe not playing Trossard earlier than he did. He started Jesus in that game on the wing because Martinelli, I guess, wasn't available or wasn't fit to start. So Pep can, or Arteta can maybe regret a little of that. So where we are with Man City now is they just continue to win every game. Doesn't or it's not always pretty, but to not have lost a game since December 6th, other than like Real Madrid, is absolutely bonkers. Uh, yeah, I was wondering. I've been saying the whole year that I didn't think Man City were as strong as they've been in the past, mostly because they've been without Holland for like 2 months, without Kevin De Bruyne for five of those months. I didn't know Phil Foden was going to be this good. To be honest, Man City fans have always been saying that, but we just never really seen it in spurts or in consistently like this. But at the same time, Pep's not always played him. Phil Foden didn't even start in the Champions League final last year. So Phil Foden really has that's kind of been the story a little bit for them. Rodri continues to not lose a game for over a calendar year. That's annoying as well. But uh, the only time they dropped points, I think they dropped points to Liverpool, they dropped points to Arsenal, and I think Chelsea. And that really is it since December 6th. They are a machine. Whether or not it's an illegal machine can be discussed or not. But for them to finish on, I think it is going to be 91 points again. I didn't think anyone was going to get close to 90 back in December. So that's just you got to have 90 points if you're going to challenge for the league. Arsenal didn't necessarily. If they do come up short, that'll be it. It won't necessarily be because of Son not being able to convert a chance. Because I've seen a bunch of fans melting down about that. It'll be Arsenal fans losing 4 points to Fulham and 6 points really to Aston Villa. Uh, but here, it wasn't really that pretty. Spurs set up to at least give City as much fits as any other team has done. And I think Arsenal kind of did something similar where they clogged up they clogged up the middle and allowed City to have the wide areas. They didn't really care when the ball went out wide. Now a lot of teams have been trying to do that as well, but it just hasn't been as well as this because it's not just they're out of possession that was good. Spurs were good at just keeping the ball when City were trying to get them to lose it. And one of the reasons they were able to do that is Vicario is quite good with his feet. Not a lot of keepers. Emi Martinez is good with his feet. The games that City have actually struggled with have been that. And if you're West Ham or if you're an Arsenal fan, West Ham do have Areola. Areola is much better than Fabianski, so you probably want Areola to actually be your keeper. Going into that game, if West Ham can actually do something, but the things to talk about as well is Foden again just continues to pop up after not really necessarily playing well. He did the same versus Fulham, and then he pops up here with that because it really is his run. It's not just and it's his run from the left side of the field. He's not. He actually is in position to make a run down the wing, and that actually is what sets up the first goal. So City didn't have any kind of width in that first half, and Foden. I don't necessarily know if it's just he was lucky to be in that situation or not, but him being able to make that run, it's not Gvardiol, it's Foden. That's where the goal comes from. And as far as the only concerns, I guess, is there's no Ake. You imagine Ake? I think got hurt versus versus Fulham. Probably no Ederson, no Kevin De Bruyne. Maybe we'll have to see versus West Ham. But also, no Ederson means Ortega. And how is he going to respond after everyone kind of is saying how he's won them the title after that game? Does Ortega maybe have a bit of a mess up versus West Ham? That could maybe happen. We'll have to. Well, it's not easy to uh, to perform after you've been so great. If you're I won't say a backup. If you're on the bench now, he has been able to do it this year, so maybe it's not gonna affect him that much, but we'll have to see. And then with we'll see what they do versus West Ham. We'll see if Pep maybe does something where he doesn't play Jeremy Doku again. Jack Grealish I think was available. Maybe do we see Jack Grealish or not? And then with Spurs, it is what it is. I mean, finish fifth. You get the way they started the season, I think hearing fifth, I think they would have been okay with that. Losing Harry Kane the way they did. Uh, you didn't really know how good Mickey Van de Ven and Romero were going to be together as a pair. And just the issue was once you lost Mickey Van de Ven with his hamstring injury, that kind of went a little bit of your season as well. You weren't able to play that really high line that you liked so much. So uh, and the tactic to keep the ball was good, but at the same time, you didn't really have a way to apply any kind of finish. So the SAR tactic I liked. I think it actually helped out a little bit where you didn't necessarily have Basuma. So I don't necessarily know if Basuma was kind of hurting SAR or not. It seemed towards the end of the season they weren't able to play together at the same time. The only thing I would say is Hoiberg was one of the fourth in that midfield. I didn't necessarily think he had his best game. When I mentioned how Foden had that chance, it was because of Hoiberg having a really hard error. I was surprised we didn't see Lo Celso. I really was. I thought Lo Celso came on, or at least Oliver Skip even. But I thought Lo Celso came on the second half versus Liverpool, looked quite well, and Lo Celso was the reason why they got back in the game back in November versus Man City. Back in that game when Lo Celso came on and had a wonderful goal, and it just was quite good in that second half at playing between lines, and so it's a shame we didn't see a little bit more of him. That's all you can maybe say. And the reason why we're here is Man City did go on to handle their business versus Fulham. They not really anything to talk about the game. I guess Gvardiol having 2 goals, had a chance to maybe get a third after there was a late PK, but Alvarez took the PK. The game wasn't though that great either. I thought Man City were struggling a little bit as well. Very lackadaisical, lackluster. Uh, and then you look at I think it's Bernardo Silva is actually clattered into, and I guess it's not a foul. And then Foden just kind of gets the ball near the edge of the box and is able to have the finish to find the corner. And Phil Foden just has showed up time after time this year with really timely goals, not just goals at a high number, but just really timely and important goals as well. There's talks that maybe he's player of the year. I would argue Rodri, but I can't make a case against Foden. I can at least understand it, and it's been for reasons like that. And the funny thing is I think in a lot of these games, I think he's actually been quite poor, but he's just showed up in the right moments and been quite good in moments. And really, that's sometimes when you need a playmaker, that's what you need. Some maybe a reason why someone is poor is maybe they're asked to kind of do too much, and it just again the game is 90 minutes. You don't have to judge them on the full 90 minutes. You have to judge them on the performance. Does a performance lead to a win or not? And you can say that Phil Foden's performances have led to a lot of wins, like all of them. Um, and Gvardiol was kind of the talk after this game as well. Gvardiol was good versus Wolves as well, and just seems ever since that goal versus Real Madrid, he showed up with a goal versus Luton. He's been on goal scoring for him, and he's been just a rock defensively as well, and just he's good with the ball at his feet. He just he's the player that people are expecting. When Man City signed him, you wondering, Man City were going to be this juggernaut of a team, defensively. And it took a real long time for him to actually find footing in the 11, but he has, and he's been quite stellar the last month or two as well. And it just Fulham, you didn't really know what to expect coming into the game. They went somewhat strong. But the interesting thing was seeing Hirobi in the midfield, and he got played a little bit out of position for this first goal with Gvardiol. It's a fantastic find by Kevin De Bruyne as well. De Bruyne plays a pass that I don't think a lot of people would have played, but Phil Foden also does a really good job to make a run that drags, I think, Paulinho to go with him. So Foden's run actually sets up that first goal as well. And then the Gvardiol just has a really nice striker's touch, and then really nice finish, and so they go in 1-0 at halftime. It felt like there were moments a little bit for Fulham. Just it seemed Munoz wasn't able to hold on to the ball. I thought that was a bit of an issue. They didn't really have a lot of width. William wasn't really playing well. Williams actually really struggled down the stretch for them, unfortunately. I thought they were better when Adama Traore came on. He at least was able to offer them something, and There were a couple times when he was able to get free and had a couple crosses off. Munoz actually got on one, to be honest, and forced at least a save. It wasn't pretty, but at least forced a save, and that really was the only shot they had the entire game. So it was just early game. Man City had to do a job, and they did do a job. I thought and so yeah, 16 shots, 9 on target, 5 big chances for them. But again, it's just it's just remarkable because I just for them to have not lost since December is just not 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 fair. Like the only games they've lost was like when Rodri missed because the red cards. Just they're a machine. Uh, and I was wondering, that probably is why Rodri would be considered Player of the Year for reasons like that. Uh, Ballon d'Or contender, to be honest, because he also won them the Champions League with his goal. But Phil Foden with his timely goals, the emergence of him, that has been the story of their season as well. Holland was going to end with something like 24, 25 goals for the year after everyone was kind of going a little bit after him for not having the follow up season that he had last year. I didn't think he could repeat what he did last season, but I didn't think it would be like this. He's still for if this is a quote unquote down year, it's scary. To be honest, what he did was Wolves. I think he could do every game if Man City actually played that way. So there's the fear is this can only improve. This is not the finished product. I think for Man City, they're going to be able to reload. Essentially, maybe they lose Kevin De Bruyne soon. It looks like you have Phil Foden ready to take that role. Maybe they can get they're bringing someone like Savio in that's been at Girona. It looks like they've been linked to someone like a Lucas Paqueta or Bruno Guimaraes. You could find a way to actually improve a little bit of that midfield. And if you get someone like a Makata or Bruno, either or maybe there's been talk that it would be both, but you get either or. Those people have the vision to play those passes, to play in Holland, making those runs. It just changes them entirely. It really does. I just feel like there is a way for this team to actually get stronger. Not necessarily this doesn't feel the finished product. I mean, they didn't have John Stones for 90% of their season at the back line as well, and Gvardiol. We haven't even seen Gvardiol play at center back. So maybe they need to maybe improve a little bit with Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker kind of has down tooled a little bit towards the end of the year. Now you have a Kanji that can maybe play fullback as well, but you don't. Maybe it would be the idea would be Rico Lewis. So maybe that would be something to think about. I think there's if they want to go at Girona, there's been someone named Jan who's played well for them. The reason why I say Girona is that City Group owned. So I do think there's still a way for this team to. There's been talks actually Frimpong on Bayern Leverkusen as well. There's a lot of ways for this team to unfortunately significantly improve still, and that is scary for the rest of Europe and fortunately for Arsenal fans. Uh, and then with Fulham, the only thing to really talk about is it's been surprising we haven't seen Adama play a little bit more. Iwobi didn't really look comfortable playing in midfield. I thought he was much better, more advanced. Got played around a little bit for that first goal. William has looked checked out, so that's not good. And also, they haven't looked good in any of the games that Tosin Adebayo has not featured in. And that has been, the start of the season, Tosin was injured for like all of it, and then he returned, and him and Calvin Bassey had quite a good partnership together. And the reason why he hasn't been playing the last few games is he's trying to run out his contract and trying to go out on free. So when Diop has been played, it hasn't necessarily looked good. Or when it was Calvin Bassey and it was Tim Ream. So Fulham need to figure something out at least in that respect. So that's not great. Marcus Silva's not really going to like the way that they finished after relatively having a strong season. To be honest, I was worried about them to start the year, and unfortunately I'm probably going to be worried about them to start next year as well. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what they do to bring in. But as far as their end of the season, Munoz came in, didn't get a start until January, and he's going to finish on 10 or 9 goals. So it's good. First season for him. You can say, and there have been some positive. They might lose Yao Polina as well in the summertime. They was expected to maybe lose. there was all this talk that he was going to go to Bayern to start last summer. Uh, so we'll probably see a different Fulham, different Marco Silva side next year. So probably not liking the way that they're finishing, but at the same time, they're just probably lucky that or liking that they didn't have to really sweat out the last month or so because it did feel like that was probably where they were heading. And then Man United and Arsenal, and we'll see how we're doing for time. I'm not going to spend a ton of time because the actual game wasn't really that great. But to get started, Arsenal do beat them 1-0 thanks to a goal from Trossard, Casemiro, yikes, but also Johnny Evans. Johnny Evans wasn't really covering himself in glory, nor was Wan-Bissaka, which I think we needs to get. Everyone's going at Casemiro, rightly so. Casemiro is being way too lazy, way too lackadaisical with it. But I think this goal easily could have still been prevented by if the other people were being switched on as well. It's not just Casemiro, though Casemiro was not good. It is worth saying that. So but and what's well, maybe I shouldn't say that because Casemiro did have some moments at least before that where you're like, oh, maybe he could actually do a job there. He had a couple of nice passes, but yeah, it's situations like that because I was trying to make a case for him last week where he's playing out of position, give him some slack, something like that. You can't excuse. That's just being switched off at the absolute worst time when you didn't really need it. But I also don't think they helped out where they were helped out with what Onana does. I think that goal comes from Onana being really bad with his feet. He gets played in a bad situation, but it starts with their buildup. It's just really clunky and bad. Amrabat just has a bad pass to him. I think Casemiro has passes it back to Onana, and then Onana fakes to Casemiro and then goes to after Havertz applies some token pressure. Onana goes with his left foot and just boots it out of bounds and boots it right to Saliba, or it might be Saliba and first Garnacho, but Garnacho is not going to win that, and Saliba is able to head it to Ben White, and lo and behold, that's when you're kind of screwed. So Onana just could have done better at least with his feet. You brought in Onana to be good with his feet, and he hasn't been good with his feet. So, uh, but before we get started, going into this was kind of weird because it feels like a lifetime ago. But back in December, Arsenal started the season off really sluggish. So they beat Nottingham Forest 2-1. They weren't convincing in that game. Then they beat Palace 2-0. Weren't really convincing either. And then they drew Fulham 2-2. And they came into this game weird. It was right before the end of right before the start of like the international break as well. And they had Man United at the Emirates, and Rashford scored the opener, and then Saka got one back, and then it looked like Garnacho had actually won the game. But his goal was ruled offsides. Very very close decision. Maybe it was the right one, but that's just kind of like this was a competitive game between these two sides. Just back in September, and then Declan Rice Arsenal got a late corner kick. Declan Rice scored on it, and then Jesus was able to get a late one in stoppage time to make it 3-1 to make it look more imbalanced than it really was. But that game was in the balance for a lot of that, and it's just funny how just a few months later, these two teams are playing on different planets. So I think it's worth to kind of keep that context a little bit in mind. Uh, and then Arsenal just they knew the job was to win. Didn't really matter how. Didn't necessarily matter how pretty it was. Though goal differential could factor in on Sunday. So if you could tack on, this is a Man United team that has allowed Coventry City to score 3 on them and has allowed Crystal Palace to score 4 or 5. It could allowed any team to get 30 shots on them on their keeper. So you wondered, if Arsenal could get an early one, could they actually tack this on a little bit? I was wondering about that. To be honest, after the Trossard goal, I was thinking this really could get ugly. And the surprise of all was it wasn't. And I can't tell if just Man United were actually somewhat sound in how they set up, or Arsenal just were fine, just sitting out and leaving with 1-0. It was also miserable. It was rainy and whatnot. I don't know if that really factored in or not. I just think it was very surprising to see how Arsenal weren't really trying to really make a statement. To be honest, but they didn't. And so if say if Man City do like draw that West Ham game and it goes to goal differential, are you going to regret that? Well, who knows? Uh, and then let's see, with Man United, it really couldn't get worse than what it was versus Crystal Palace. So there is worth that. No Bruno in versus Palace, no Bruno in this game. Would we see But the main thing really for Crystal Palace was the midfield was just paper thin. It was exposed. The back line was exposed. Playing Casemiro out of position. Would we see that again? And we did. But we did see something different. So we did see Mano and Amrabat played together with McTominay, and then with Rasmus in front of McTominay, and then Amad Diallo. Amad Diallo got a start, and then Garnacho, and it was a little bit surprising. And then with the back line was Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Casemiro, Evans, and Dallo. Uh, I mean, I was looking at that, and I really did think it's going to be rough, because you just imagined Casemiro and Evans just you just thought, if Arsenal are going to any kind of turnover, it's going to be they're going to be in retreat mode. It's just going to be Pepper City on Onana. Maybe Onana makes like 20 saves or 10 saves, and Onana really didn't have to work that much. So it was quite strange. But I was wondering, would we maybe see just kind of a back three? Maybe try to maybe play Kobe Mano and Casemiro and Amrabat together as like the midfield three. Maybe to play McTominay and Rasmus almost like two strikers. Almost like a 3-5-2. Would that maybe work a little bit better for you, or maybe even play like a 5-3-2 essentially, and you have maybe your wing backs, either a Dallo or Garnacho. Maybe you have Dallo as kind of a makeshift center back with Wan-Bissaka, and you have Garnacho and Diallo as your wing backs, or Anthony. I was surprised we didn't see something similar to that. I've been wondering, would we finally see some different tactics, different thinking from Ten Hag? We didn't see it in this game. We did see it versus Newcastle with Bruno false nine. So there's at least something there, but it doesn't really matter because the moments that or Man United were getting, they did get some good looks, and they just weren't able to really put anything away. So maybe it wouldn't have really mattered. And frankly, the setup wasn't necessarily wrong. Arsenal, I think, only had like 11 shots the entire game. Not really, they didn't really force the Onana to make a lot of really big saves. You can't really say they necessarily got it wrong, other than, well, you give away that goal almost a little cheaply, and then at that point, Arsenal don't really have to really push. So there's kind of ways to talk about that. But yeah, I'll talk about the early chances. I mean, it wasn't a bad start for Man United. So Casemiro plays a nice ball to Hoyland to run onto. Better first touch. I think Holland's in. He's getting into the box, but his touch lets him down, and then they get another chance. McTominay wins the ball off Thomas Partey. Hoyland gets the ball again in the box, and this time again, slips up. Massive chance here. McTominay, if nothing else, Hoyland needs to stay on his feet and get this on goal. He's no more than 12 yards away, and he has a good shot on him if he stays on his feet, but he just slips. So again, it was raining, and you don't want to necessarily blame him for that, but uh, there was unlucky, and Hoyland's been complaining, or people online have been complaining that he's been kind of attacked a little bit. Well, he doesn't get a lot of looks, and so when you're fighting on scraps, you need to make those scraps count. So, and he was benched yesterday, though he scored with his first touch coming off the bench. But this was a pretty big chance. But another thing to say is it's really good by McTominay. This deserved more than what McTominay more than the finished product, because McTominay does well to catch Thomas Partey by surprise. And then there's another chance where Dallo gets the ball from Casemiro, another decent pass by Casemiro. So he wasn't playing terrible to start the game, but Arsenal had bodies in the box, and Garnacho couldn't really find the angle for his shot. Eventually, I think it flies over. Decent run here by Dallo. Catches Ben White a little bit off guard, and he's forced to focus on Garnacho, and then Saka's kind of surprised by it as well. This could have led to something. So Man United were at least being competitive, and then lo and behold, 20 minutes, Trossard gets a goal, and so there's just not really a whole lot of action at this point. A lot of moves had stalled in the final third, but but when Onana was getting the ball for the most part, before this, he had been allowed to take a lot of time on it. And this time it seemed, after Casemiro passed it back, Havertz does run and offer some token pressure. And that gets Onana just kind of booted upfield, and that forces, and after he boots it upfield, he does it with his left foot. And so maybe it's weak. Saliba then wins the ball easily, heads it to Ben White. Ben White, he keeps his head up and sees Havertz wide open, unmarked. And because Casemiro is basically, sitting, camped down, by the goal line, he's like 10 yards on sides when he really shouldn't be. Havertz gets the ball, and then he's able to carry it into the box. Evans is there, and he just doesn't engage. It's very, very sloppy by Evans. Casemiro, people going at him. I'm gonna go with both. I think Evans has to do better to cut this off. And instead, Havertz can just keep his head up, and then he sees Trossard making a run, to the near post. Wan-Bissaka has to do better here. He has to block Trossard as well, and he doesn't. And then Trossard is makes the right run and has the striker's instinct with the tap in. So uh, it's just shambolic. It just really should not have happened. Like Casemiro is 25 yards behind Evans, playing Havertz offside or onside. So it's lost the composure, and it's again. I think Evans has to do better here as well. And so yeah, again, Casemiro was at the heart of a lot of discussions after the Palace game. I was trying to defend him. I can't defend that. Uh, and then with Arsenal, Havertz makes the right play, and then Trossard makes the right run into the box. And so Arteta moving to play Trossard, in this little title run has changed Arsenal a little bit. And in a way, maybe Martinelli actually getting injured was a little bit of a blessing. But in the beginning, he was playing Jesus instead of Trossard in this little role. And if Arsenal do go on to actually miss out just by a point or so, I think Arteta's going to regret that. I think Trossard could have played a little bit earlier than he did. And then there were a couple chances for Man United. There was one by Amad Diallo. He had a nice little run into the box. Rasmus again slipped, unfortunately. But Man United did have moments where they were getting behind the Arsenal back line. It's just the execution was lacking. And then there was another chance with Garnacho making a run into the box. Saliba has to stop here. So United's shape at least is working. Amrabat has dropped to basically form a third center back in a back three. So Arsenal's pressing structure of Havertz and Odegaard isn't enough. United are able to pass around Saka and White, and then Evans kind of plays Garnacho, doing a little give and go, and Garnacho has space to run into. But once again, just the decision making was lacking. It is a fantastic stop by Saliba. That is worth saying, and given he's managed to play basically every minute for Arsenal this season, he's probably deserving a Player of the Year nomination as well, especially if they do go on to win. They lost him last year, and that really did derail the title hopes. And the change has been them having him back and able to go this season, and not just go, be able to play every single game. So it's kind of an under talked about storyline as well. And then there was another chance for Man United. So all these chances are Man United, really. So Garnacho's shot just wide off the mark, but this is a big chance as well. So Diallo gets the ball. He has a cross. Diallo was having fun on the other side as well. Much better, much more active than we had seen from Anthony. So it's been surprising we haven't seen more Diallo recently, especially after yesterday's result or performance. Garnacho gets the ball. He uses Dallow's overlap to confuse Ben White, and Ben White and Saka both go to Dallo. Garnacho is free to actually cut towards the box, and if he gets if he has the angle to try curler, and he just gets the curler all wrong. He doesn't get any kind of curl and just kind of misses it out of bounds. This, if someone like Rashford is in that situation, this probably is at least forcing Raya to make a save. This is a pretty big chance. But he gets it wrong. But you can see there's clearly a player in Garnacho. He's got such quick feet. He makes good decisions, at least until the final I guess product. You can say makes good decisions to get in danger areas, and then that's kind of when the end product is lacking a little bit. But for him being just 19 or 20, there's a lot of promise in him. You can see. So there's at least something for Man United fans to be hopeful about. And especially seeing how Amad Diallo has played the last 2 games, you can maybe say the same with him. Maybe you can sell Jadon Sancho, and you have a Diallo to think about. Maybe that's finally the player you can play on the right wing, because you've struggled for forever on that side, and you can finally maybe do something with Anthony. Finally get rid of him. But we'll see what they do with Rashford, next season or in the summertime as well. But there's at least something for Man United fans to kind of just hold on to here, and you haven't been able to say that the entire year. And so another thing too is the thing for Man United was all these looks were coming down the wing, and I don't necessarily know if Arsenal were trying to kind of forcing that, but there was nothing really being created through the middle. And Diallo and Garnacho were creating things for themselves. They weren't really creating for Hoyland. They weren't really able to find him. They weren't really able to find McTominay. And so that's kind of the one like negative. Now, a lot of that can be down to Saliba and Gabriel just being rocks defensively as well. Not really like they were letting them open to be in the box. But that's just the one kind of like just kind of critique, I guess you can say. And then there was a chance for Garnacho and another shot that just kind of misses near post. He probably could do better here, but sloppy by both teams really. Almabet has a poor pass here to Saka, and then Saka has a poor pass, just giving it right back. Mano then turns, finds McTominay, who glides past Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey didn't look his best this game either. Arsenal did look in trouble here. Garnacho gets the ball, gets it onto his left foot. He goes past Saliba, and or it might be Ben White, and he, instead of trying to go across goal, he tries to go near post and just misses it wide. He needs to at least try to get this cross post. Force Raya to make a save, because this is a pretty big chance as well. But again, I mean, so the chances were Man United were interesting, but at the same time, just it showed the gap between the two clubs at the moment. It's just they were able to be competitive, but that's just probably not what Man United fans want at this point in time. And then McTominay played Garnacho, and he had a chance to maybe play in Rasmus, and just didn't do it. So that was kind of annoying for them as well. There was a late chance for Arsenal where Martinelli at least maybe forced Raya to make a save. Probably the best chance Arsenal had in the second half. So Trossard had since come off, Martinelli on. You can see Martinelli does offer a bit of a run, a bit something different. Odegaard plays him, making a run in behind, cuts inside Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka falls. Martinelli hesitates, maybe a few too many touches, you can say, but he does get the shot off and does at least force a save. And then there was a chance for Garnacho just streaking upfield again, but the shot was blocked. Counter opportunity, but nothing really came from it. And then Declan Rice had a decent shot at the end, but that was kind of it. Yeah, 11 shots and just 5 on target. Man United 14 and only 2 on target, so that kind of says a little bit where the game was. Arsenal got the job done, but again, goal differential could matter. I was surprised they didn't try to tack on, to be honest. You look at that back line, that's a back line that has just been conceding for fun, and it's just surprising that they didn't take advantage of it. To be honest, and maybe they just couldn't. It could be some of that as well. And after because they conceded early as well, so you just kind of assumed this is going to be ugly, and it wasn't. So, uh, but I thought there were opportunities though to push forward. There'd be a bad pass, and then instead Rice or Party or Saliba would slow everything down, try to be more safe. When you could have actually put pedal to the metal. So I was a little bit surprised that Arsenal only had 11 shots versus this. Um, I mean, Burnley just a couple of weeks ago had 18. Again, Coventry City had close to 30. Burnley, Palace had 20 plus. Just so many teams have been averaging so many looks at Onana's goal, and they didn't really they didn't really force Onana to make a lot of saves. So to get started with Arsenal, um, because I think the passing numbers as well tell the story. Let's see. Yeah, 357. It wasn't the high flying Arsenal that we have seen. Now again, it was a mucky day. That maybe played a role in it, but it was a little bit surprising. But to get started with, I'll get started with Trossard. So uh, just having a killer in the box. Titles are won by players going on runs at the most important parts of the season. City have always had a player that does that. Kevin De Bruyne, Yaya Toure, for in 2018, Gundogan back in 22, and this year you can say Foden and Gvardiol. And for Arsenal, it's been Trossard. It's been Havertz in moments, but it has been Trossard that has saved them in so many games. And I do think maybe a mistake that Arteta can look at is not starting Trossard versus City. Back in early April or late March. Pep playing Arteta playing Zinchenko, not playing Zinchenko versus maybe City, opt in for Kiwar instead when Kiwar didn't really offer you anything, or Tomiyasu. That could maybe be something that he looks at and regrets a little bit as well. But another thing to say is this is the player that Arsenal's board brought in after missing out on Mudryk. Um, and it's taken a while for them to figure out how to really play him. He's been a utility player. He's been someone to give Martinelli minutes here and there, but Trossard has really come in, and he's honestly been their Diego Jota. He's someone that comes in, overperforms his XG, and just sniffs a chance into the box and takes it. Maybe he's not going to be the best when it comes to being someone to be those transition counter kind of attackers, but Arsenal don't play that way anyways. Arsenal like doing this field tilt stuff. So when you're not really playing to Martinelli's strength anyways, I think they messed up not playing Trossard earlier in the season than they did. They have all this possession in teams of final thirds. someone like Trossard's able to, he has wiggle on him, and he's able to get a shot off, and he's one of the best finishers on the team, if not the best. And I do think it has been a mistake not to use him a little bit more than they have. And lo and behold, he's able to get their lone goal again. So it's not the only time that that's happened. And then Saliba really good when he needed to be, as well. The couple times when he needed to have like a key stop, and he did. And Arsenal have only conceded 8 goals, I think, for the entire calendar year, which is just beyond bonkers. And it's not really like Ray has had to make a lot of saves. And Saliba has actually had to bail out Gabriel in some of those moments. So Saliba is equally deserving of Player of the Year, at least shouts, whether or not he gets it or not. And so the just the thing to kind of talk about here was Arsenal maybe too cute to start the season? Uh, was he maybe too late to change? Playing Declan Rice as his number 6 early on. If you think about how he started the year, it was Nketiah as a striker, Havertz in midfield, Ben White as center back, Gabriel was benched. Thomas Partey was doing right back shifts versus Fulham. It flopped versus Fulham. 90% of the season since January has been Jorginho or Partey at the 6. Rice a little bit more advanced. It took a while for them to figure out Trossard. So do we blame that, or do we have it in mind that back to back seasons they pushed Man City to the break, a machine that's breached 115 financial fair play rules, uh, or does Arteta get some criticism here? The players that he brought in, has he improved Arsenal in that respect? He brought in Rice and brought in Havertz, and you would probably say yes immediately. But another player that he brought in was Timber, and I think losing Timber unsettled what Arteta originally had planned. Uh, I don't think the idea really was to use that Havertz in midfield necessarily. I think the idea was Timber and Rice maybe together, and that would have maybe had Declan Rice kind of been a little bit more defensively, and you would have had Timber kind of be a little bit more of that kind of playmaker who's a little bit better defensively than necessarily Zinchenko. I think losing Timber really did kind of hurt what the idea was. But another thing too is they didn't really know what they had in Declan Rice, and it was always weird how you had someone like Jesus, and the problem with Jesus was he wasn't really a goal scorer, and neither is Havertz. But the thing that they discovered, I guess, later on in the season was while Jesus drops in and does that false nine stuff, Jesus is late to get into the box. Havertz is quite good at actually making runs and being in the box. He's quite good at actually. He's also 6'2", 6'3", when Jesus is like 5'10". Havertz is a threat in the air. So I do think Arteta just got a little too cute, a little bit with it, and if they lose out on just like a point, it really isn't the end of the world. There's a lot of room for this Arsenal team to grow as well. I mentioned how there's a lot of room for Man City to grow. I think there's a lot of room for Arsenal to grow. Another thing he did in the beginning of the season was he was playing Fabio Vieira, which was working, okay. He actually did it versus Man United, and then he did it for Spurs, and it didn't really work out, and then we never saw him again. We haven't seen Smith Rowe really get any looks this entire year. I don't know if he might be out the door. So if they lose it, it's not going to be because Son missed that chance for City. It'll be like the points drop versus Fulham, the points drop versus Villa. Went to the Etihad, did play rather passive. Only had 6 shots the entire game. Now I get the idea was maybe to try to make things ugly in the first half and try to go a little bit more in the second half. But there were a couple of chances when Jesus got the ball, and I think Trossard would have done better than Jesus from those looks that I remember. And what's funny enough is when Trossard had the counter moment. Yes, he screwed up on the counter moment, where someone like a Martinelli would have been better in that situation. So he probably screwed up a little bit there. It seemed like he was playing Martinelli through the middle and not necessarily on the left side. Uh, Maybe Jesus would have actually done better in that situation. So it's almost like Arteta got it wrong on the opposite. But at the same time, Klopp's leaving. It feels like they'll be able to go again, but at the same time, just an injury to one thing they have to figure out is they've been too reliant on Odegaard and Saka, and just an injury to one, injury to Saliba next year, that season would be gone too. So this was an opportunity. They didn't do anything in the January window. You figured they possibly could have done something then. Brought in someone. I don't know if their books are necessarily tight. Uh, so we'll see what they do in the summertime. Now, Arsenal fans are going to demand a striker. You did pay 60 million for Havertz last summer. If that's going to be a bust, if because Havertz hasn't done enough to offer you $60 million, he has been enough to. If the idea is do it that way, I think what you need to do is you need to get rid of Thomas Partey and Jorginho. Find someone that actually is better at holding or better at least on the ball. There are players out there now. The problem is you don't really know. You probably overpaid for Declan Rice, unfortunately. Uh, but Declan Rice has shown he actually works quite better when it comes to. He's a good ball carrier, so he's good with progression with it. He's maybe not the best passer, but as long as you don't, you're not relying on him to actually get through the first line of defense, get through a line of progression. He does work, and he's always he's fantastic when it comes to being in the box, being recovery. He's a fantastic presser. So, but you maybe overpaid a little bit for there, but there's a lot of room for this team to grow, and we'll see how they grow next year. They'll have Timber next year. I think they'll be better with Timber. What do you do with Jesus and Zinchenko? Maybe that's kind of maybe those would be players kind of on the door, out the door as well. But yeah, I mean, there could, and I still think there will be a twist. I do think there'll be a twist Sunday. Because maybe just because as a Liverpool fan, City don't just win a title on you; they win it by giving you hope and then taking it away, like they did in 22. So I do think there'll be something that the people will be talking at halftime. I don't think it's set in stone just yet, but we'll have to see. Uh, but I do think one thing Arteta needs to think about is whether or not it's the field tilt stuff or not. They have been way too passive at times, and I do think they need to work on that. So, getting Timber to play next year, uh, that can improve you. Maybe you need to find a way to not be as reliant on Odegaard. You need to find a way to save Saka's legs. I think he's just. I don't necessarily know how you address that, but that needs to be something you do. And then they've been reliant on set piece goals the entire year. The reason why they haven't needed a 20-goal striker is because they have like 20 goals on set pieces. Is that sustainable? That can be kind of maybe discussed as well. So there's still room for this team to improve. Do you go get an Ivan Tony? That's probably going to be that's mentioned. I know Dusan Vlahovic is someone that they were linked to in the beginning. I know there's Victor Gilchrist in Portugal, who eh, who had before he was at Coventry City. Maybe that wouldn't be a name that would excite. But he's probably available. Alexander Ishak's probably too hard too expensive, at least after doing a Havertz. But there are some guys out there. There's a Louis Opendana on Leipzig, who's been linked to a number of clubs. He's not really. Uh, he's a little bit more of like the Jesus, where he's not really like one of those tall physical beasts, but he's got impressive finishing numbers. Um, so we'll see. We'll see if Arsenal do try to go out to get a striker, to get someone that finishes. Trossard has been able to offer that, but really he's been the only one. If you don't have Trossard's goals, Arsenal aren't here. It is worth saying that. People are going to talk about what Havertz has been able to do for them. Havertz has been, uh, I don't know, mayonnaise on a sandwich, essentially. Mayonnaise on, I guess, a good sandwich. It made the sandwich better. But you needed something before that, because before it wasn't really working just with him. So what does Arsenal to go out and do in the summer? We'll have to see. And then with Man United, there was some reasons to maybe be finally upbeat than we've seen in a while. I mean, Casemiro's mistakes are at center back, but also just you can't really defend that. But they're not going to have him at center back, you imagine. It looks like they actually got Lisandro Martinez at least able to get some minutes yesterday off the bench, so he might be able to play him at least. You might be able to play center backs at least versus Man City. Lo and behold, there was no Bruno in this game, and I don't necessarily know if that actually made them more organized, but at the same time, they made them less of a threat in the final third. And I really did like the Bruno Fernandes false nine idea yesterday. To be honest, I liked it a lot more than I was expecting, mostly because he was basically switching with McTominay, and McTominay still can be your quote unquote striker in the box. Uh, you don't really love someone to just
be a false nine, leave that area and just kind of do, because Bruno likes to create, and when he creates, he likes basically crossing stuff in. You still need someone to be in the box for him. Now, can Rasmus do that job too? Can he drop in and do the McTominay job too? I don't really know, but I usually don't really love when Bruno plays as that cam role when he's playing in midfield and he does all that stuff, leaving that space because that leaves you basically kind of behind, looks a little more vulnerable. Um, but it wasn't bad yesterday, to be honest. Now, they were still they got a little bit lucky versus Newcastle. Gordon had a ball that flashed wide that Almiron could have put away. There were a couple of times when, Casemiro and Amrabat had a couple, really nice, clearances at the very end to prevent goals, to prevent Newcastle, going ahead. But at the same time, there was at least energy in the side that we just haven't seen in a while. So, and Kobe Mano wasn't playing midfield by himself, for example. Amrabat was there. Ahmed and Garnacho on the wings. They both were able to, do something with their feet, and being able to both were actually looking to, play people in. Uh, and again, I don't necessarily know if it was because Hoyland wasn't playing. I That doesn't really make sense to me because it's not like he gets a lot of touches, but just the team was really fluid yesterday, in a way just we haven't seen. So, we'll see what they have, in store for Man City in the FA Cup. I'm not expecting anything at all. So maybe we'll, I don't know. They weren't bad actually last year. Uh, and they started actually, giving up the goal to Gunnigan like 30 seconds into the game. It was a 2-1 kind of game, going into like the 70th minute, and, Man City kind of, struggled, just to hold on to that 2-0 lead. They did a decent job to at least, pack things through the middle, in that game. And again, I've been surprised we haven't seen more, Amrabat. So it's but at the same time, if it's Johnny Evans, if it's Casemiro, it's all it takes is just one ball for Hoyland to Holland to just kind of, run through that, with a rampage. So, uh, we'll see what Ten Hag has in store, in as far as, next week. We'll see what he has in store for, does he play even Casemiro, in that game? I would play Amrabat. Uh, and, Dallo looked decent, versus Arsenal. So there were some reasons to really let's be a little more hopeful. One thing I will say is the Onana experiment hasn't really worked out. Last year you dropped De Gea, who is the Golden Glove winner. You brought in this guy because De Gea wasn't good with his feet. Onana hasn't been good with his feet, and he's made some errors with his saves, this year as well. He has had some highlights, you can say, but he's had a lot of lowlights as well, and just he needs to be able to improve. And if not, that'll be another mark on Ten Hag because they brought him in because he was Ten Hag's keeper at Ajax. Now he was also in the Champions League final. And what's weird is I rewatched the Champions League final recently. He looks a different keeper, and I don't know if it's just Inter's setup was different. Inter have had better players to play out from the back, but Onana was very good with his feet in that game. It's just that has not been the same. That has not been the same player that we've been seeing this year. So I've been a little bit surprised, by that. And, with uh with the Newcastle, they still, I think they guess gave themselves a chance to still have a shot at Europe. Had they lost, it would have been done so. But they do have Brighton at the end of the season. Brighton have kind of been, down tooling a little bit towards the end as well. So we'll see what they do. As far as coaching search on the front, there have been talks that, Ten Hag might be out the door, maybe not. But the names have been like Southgate and Potter, which doesn't really, instill you a lot with confidence. I was wondering if maybe you bring in someone like Michael Carrigan, who's done, made some news, with Middlesbrough. If not, yeah, just maybe you just stick with Ten Hag and try to get the structure around him, much better. Don't allow him to have any kind of say in operations, any kind of say in squad matters. The idea of selling or shipping out Sancho hasn't worked out. The idea of sending out Anthony Elanga has not worked out. The idea of not playing Amberbet, the idea of bringing, Mason Mount didn't really work out. He's been injured, but you don't really know how him and Bruno play together, anyways. Maybe the idea is you ship Bruno out and you play Mason Mount next year. Uh, the Rashford and Hoyland didn't really mesh well together all year. Hoyland has really struggled just to get any kind of service applied to him, but at the same time, when he does get looks, he's kind of rushed at, but he's not getting any kind of touches. So which one is that the issue? And then just not playing Amrabat, I think has been wrong too. So they've been not playing Amad Diallo. Just there've been mistakes everywhere. So at least they're ending the season somewhat on a bit of a bright note. After the Newcastle game, Ten Hag was able to speak to the fans. Fans apparently gave him a decent reception, so that's good to see. At least he's not and he's not blameless, but I think it's easy to look at the manager where whether or not it's the players. I think it's the wage structure as well. I think that hurts them. Had them having like the highest wage bill in Europe doesn't. I don't think that helps them at all. I don't think that helps the cause. And then it's the people that they've been bringing in. It's also just the influencers around the club, the people in media. Rio Ferdinand, Roy Keane, having all this say. I think that hurts them as well. So. Uh, it's easy to look at Ten Hag and just kind of blame him. He's the head of the snake. He's not. I don't think he's the head of. You get rid of Ten Hag, there's still another. There's a head another head that'll pop up. So we'll see. We'll see how they finish the season. They're still at Brighton, and then we'll see what they do versus Man City. And then that's just kind of where we are with the title race. And don't have a lot to say with the other games. I just kind of get started with Liverpool and Aston Villa, 3-3. Entertaining game. Could have been could have been 7-3. To be honest, Aston Villa had a lot of looks to make this a lot more than it was. Musa Diaby had a bit of a horror show, but Luis Diaz for Liverpool did as well. I mean, I said 7-3. It could have been 7-7. It was a very very open game. It was fun. The only negative is there were a lot of times when there was a play was stopped because of a very very close offsides call that just you couldn't really tell with the naked eye. I think they almost all of these should have counted. But it got started with kind of a horror mistake by Emi Martinez. Just Harvey Elliott was able to underlap Salah. He has a cross in with his right foot. Emi Martinez tries to catch it and just kind of drops it into the into the net essentially. And then Tielemans is able to make it 1-0 or 1-1 after I think it's Alexis McAllister tries do a little too much. He has a number of easy passes, open to him. At this point, Liverpool are all over Aston Villa, and this basically allowed Aston Villa to get back into the game. It's a poor pass that's just blocked off. Villa are able to counter. Then I think it's Ollie Watkins is able to basically square Quanta 1v1. And Quanta shows him the line, but still allows himself to get beat. And then Watkins has a really nice cutback ball that finds Tillmans is able to tap it in. So good finish. And then Gakpo is able to make it 2-1. They're able to, I think it's Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz plays Gomez. This one was looked uh, for like 5 minutes, whether or not it was offside or not. You couldn't really tell. Uh, but Luis Diaz played Gomez, and then Gomez had a shot saved. And then Gakpo was able to just kind of be there to put it away. So uh, that's been my kind of issues with him. Really, too often he's not really in the right position. But when you play number 9, I don't want you to be outside the box. I want you to actually be in the box when a cross comes in. So good to see there. Good to see Gomez at least. I wanted him to score that goal, but it was saved by Emre Martinez getting down, and then Quanta made it 3-1 after a bit of a free kick, and I think Harvey Elliott had a nice delivery, and Quanta jumps up and has like a Holland kind of like header. He flies in a 3-1. You assumed that would probably be enough, and then just Aston Villa just kept getting looks, kept getting in behind. Just Liverpool were kind of sloppy a little bit. Allison did not look good when the ball was at his feet, just giving it away. There was a moment when it looked like Villa scored. I think Ollie Watkins scored, and they was chopped off for an offsides. And then there was another time when it looked like uh, Musa Diaby or it was Leon Bailey that was completely free on goal and had a square pass as well where they scored. And that was also ruled for a late offside. So it was happening over and over again. When a couple of times when Musa Diaby was in and just had a really bad finish on him, but just they were getting in way way too easily. I didn't really like the way that Liverpool was setting up. They were trying Trent a little bit more in the midfield, doing that inverted stuff. So we saw basically that 3-2-2-2 kind of 3 kind of thing. But what that means is when Liverpool lose the ball, that means the wide areas were always open. And with a team like Aston Villa, when you have a Musa Diaby, a Leon Bailey, a Watkins who can run into channels, when you allow or would you have a Luca Digna and even a Matty Cash on the wing on the fullback spot, they don't mind attacking the wings. A lot of Man City don't, but a team like Aston Villa do. They like the wide areas, and so Liverpool was just kind of playing into that essentially. And so when Liverpool were losing the ball and Trent's out of position, just a long ball over the top, it forces Konsa to leave his center back spot to go kind of be your makeshift fullback, and then if he gets beat, then you're kind of a man short in the central area, and that was happening over and over again as well. So it was it was not the high flying team that we saw versus Spurs. Liverpool kind of struggled a little bit, and then Klopp made some changes, and the Sibs weren't necessarily good either. Another thing to say is Luis Diaz was getting into all these looks and just kept messing up. It was so frustrating. Uh, but it was just really glad that this game didn't actually mean anything. Because if the title was on the line, this would have been this would have been a horror show. Uh, but that's been really their season. Their season has been messing up those individual decisions when easy passes were on, easy square passes were on, and not being able to be clinical despite all that creation. And then on the flip side, just being kind of messy at the back, messy in defense. Uh, they they started the season doing this kind of 3-2-2, 3 kind of stuff, and it wasn't working. When you're playing Trent Alexander out of position, it leaves you exposed. I don't like it, and one of the reasons why it didn't really Liverpool, at least in the beginning, weren't really missing Trent Alexander that much is when Bradley was forced to play. They went back to almost that 4-3-3, just traditional kind of fullback setup, and just Bradley's better at just keeping width and being actually defending on the wing, essentially, and just that is kind of the one just kind of negative, at least going forward. We'll see what Slot does a little bit with that, but that's just kind of where we are. Uh, the Aston Villa with 19 shots, 5 on target. Liverpool with 14. Liverpool with 500 passes, though. Big chances missed for Aston Villa. It's worth saying. Like Musa Diaby did have a little bit of a rough patch, but yeah, I mean, the game notes I had was Liverpool 2.0 was needs to go away. We need to see Liverpool 3.0. Uh, no Robinson at left back. Maybe that forced a change. Gomez at left back was different. I do think it's the worst way to play the Trent Alexander-Arnold, playing him that way. I'd rather either see him being played almost in right midfield or just in general as a fullback, keeping with, make him do the wing shifts. Maybe he doesn't like it. I don't know. But that forces you to play solid differently because when you're playing Trent inverted, that forces solid to be further out wide. I've never really liked that either. Gakpo was played over Darwin Núñez, and Gakpo was too often not anywhere near the center backs, not anywhere near making a line in behind the Aston Villa back line. So that was frustrating. And the one thing you can say towards the end, it was Klopp started the season off so good with the lineups and adjustments, and after like February, all that ended, all that flopped. And here was bad too. Curtis Jones came on to play left wing, not midfield, left wing, and he wasn't good. Gravenberch came on, and he's a cone out of possession. Alexis came on and moved to play the number 6 after Endo went off, and Alexis had the mistake that basically led to the second goal for Aston Villa. Uh, and then I think Alexis is dribbled past Musa Diaby. Musa Diaby had a poor game until like the very end when he had a really nice dribble, and the dribble basically created the goal for John Duran to get the second. And then Szoboszlai came on, played midfield again, played right mid again, and it was a shame we never really saw him in a more advanced role. And then Nunez came on, and again he couldn't time his runs on sides, and just yeah, Luis Diaz just kept making error after error, and it was frustrating. We didn't see maybe Gakpo tried it left mid or left wing, and then Nunez tried through the middle, like just once this whole season. That has been frustrating, but at least again this game didn't matter, so there was less meltdowns, at least, to be had about that. There was a lot of dead weight, though, in the squad. Curtis Jones, I think, probably needs a loan move. Gravenberch, I have no idea what to do with, especially if the idea is Arne Slot coming in, he's going to play a different formation. He doesn't really fit. Luis Diaz, I would prefer to probably get a move on. To be honest, he has a lot of 1v1 creation, but he's never going to offer you any kind of end product, and he hurts you more than anything else. He's 27 too. It doesn't seem like he's going to get better at that. Samikis doesn't seem like he's the best backup for Robertson, and the only thing I was thinking about too is I think Allison could be a problem next year if Arne Slot asks him to play the way that his keeper at Feinhord has been playing. Because Allison has not looked comfortable with his feet all year, so that's not been good. But how did we get here? They started the year losing Fabinho and they losing Henderson. I was fine with losing Firmino. Yeah, you probably could have used him to be honest. But because they were short an attacker all year, but losing Fabinho and not replacing him was dumb. Endo 31, he's a stopgap, and his legs I think gave out on him, or towards the end of the year. Loaning out Fabio Cavallo, I think was dumb too. Someone with a killer instinct in the final third. Maybe they didn't realize they would have Jota out for as long as he's been out, but someone like a Cavallo coming in, it just to kind of just be someone add some energy for the final 15 minutes of games. You could have used him, and he had I think 12 goals for Hull City the second half of the year in the championship. No, championship, but you know, putting a boot through the through the ball to find the net is doing that too. So I think that was maybe short sighted. Dan's not seeing the field. I've talked about that enough, but just and Klopp's team's not really having any attacking identity all year. That's been not great. Defensively, they've been a mess as well. So it's been rough. But the Fabinho thing has been really unfortunate. They started the year bidding 110 million for Moses Caicedo. They recognized this was a problem, and it was a problem that they could spend 110 million on. So where did that money go? Because they bought Endo for 20 million after that, and nothing else was used. They knew they had all those injury issues in January. You knew it was Klopp's last year. Why not give him a present? So I think they could have. I think this team was close to being enough to push for a title, but with no additional investments and just not everyone being able to stay healthy, they're going to come up short, and they probably do deserve to come up short. So we'll see what they're able to do. We'll see what Michael Edwards' supercomputer can find as far as a Fabinho replacement. Uh, it looks like there's been talks that Manuel Ugarte at PSG might be available. He's someone I wanted last year, and PSG got him and didn't play him. I don't know why PSG didn't play him. Maybe he just doesn't fit Luis Enrique's sleep ball, side to side passes. Maybe he's just more of a destroyer. But Liverpool play a little bit more risk averse football, and you need your six needs to be someone that can be a destroyer essentially. Funny enough, a Declan Rice would have worked, but I'm not going to go there. Slabashai played out of position all year. Maybe he'll do. We'll see what he offers next year. Nunez needs to time his runs on sides. If he does, he's a beast. If not, it's not great because that was annoying too. He had all that criticism, and what does he do after a whole week of criticism? He comes on side. He comes on. He starts the game after. Uh, you know, he comes on for the last 15 minutes of the game, and he's offsides like 3 times in the first 5 minutes. It's just ugh, it's frustrating. And then with Aston Villa, just the bravery on the ball and threats on the wings. That's what makes them a legit team. Like this was you were watching this. This looked like a Champions League team. This isn't someone that just kind of scraped by. So it's pretty cool to be honest. And hopefully the Champions League revenue is going to allow them to keep on to some players because that's been some talks too that some players might actually be leaving. Tielemans and Douglas Luiz in the middle. They finally had Tielemans back. They've been missing Tielemans for the last couple of games, and I just think John McGinn being playing him there. He doesn't have the same eye for a pass that Tielemans does. And a couple of those moments happened because they were really good at just being able to thread passes in. Someone like Paul Torres could be in Man City. He's a legit defender. Legit defender and really good with the ball at his feet. I mean, there's Watkins with 20 plus, 25 plus goal involvements. Leon Bailey, Musa Diaby can maybe improve a little bit. So, But there's a lot of the only thing you can say is maybe Digna and Matty Cash could maybe slightly be improved. Slightly. I don't really like when Konza was played at right back as well. They'll have Tyrone Mings next year. It could be Tyrone Mings and Konza. Maybe the idea could be Paul Torres actually at left back. Uh, there's a lot of ways for this team to still improve as well, and we'll see what they do with the Champions League. Now, with that kind of run in, they're going to have to improve the squad. The squad depth is way too small. And the only thing you can maybe say is, for the longest time, I've been like, well, they only have Ollie Watkins. And the reason why that didn't really show up is they got some pretty good goal involvements from Morgan Rogers after he came in. But I'm surprised we didn't see John Duran more in the season. And, he came off the bench in their Conference League game, but it was too little too late at that point. But he came in and he just completely took the game over. And there you go. I mean, all it takes is just someone to have some energy and someone that has a shot on him, to be honest. And Duran, offered that. So another thing too is next year they'll have Emi Buendia. That's someone that we haven't seen all year as well. So it started off with injuries to Mings and Buendia, Babaku Kamara as well. It has been a remarkable story for this team to finish in the top four, and they did it legit. They didn't need that fifth spot. It's been probably the story of the year. I would argue. I think Unai Emery is coach of the year. I'll argue that as well. Even if Arteta does beat Pep City. So one of the more cool things because there's been a lot of stuff going to script. This finally didn't go to script, so I'm pretty happy and stoked about that. And that's just kind of where I think I'll end. I don't really need to speak about all the other stuff that kind of happened. Uh, Tottenham and Burnley were beating them 1-0, and then Tottenham came back with Pedro Porro having a terrific shot, and then Mickey Van de Ven as well. And just that entire game was just Burnley not being comfortable with the lead, just having the ball and just giving it away. And that's kind of really been the story. And that'll be kind of the end that we see for Burnley. I already spoke a little bit with Spurs, so I don't really have to do much about that. I think the one thing you can say is they do have a ceiling unless they improve that striker spot, whether it's Richarlison or someone else. I do think they have right wing issues as well. So maybe it's Brennan Johnson and you bring someone on the right side. I've talked about Bowen. The funny thing enough is if Bowen's available, I want Liverpool to get Bowen. To be honest, Bowen overperformed his XG by 4 goals, and the only two players that did that was Leon Trossard and Diego Jota, two players that I have spoken, I've raved about, and it looks like Bowen is that kind of player as well. Maybe he doesn't have the clever dribbling or whatnot, but Bowen can do amazing stuff in transitions, as we've seen, and he's been a killer in the box this season. It's been his strongest season, in my opinion, and just apply it or surround him with a little more, maybe creation near him. I think he could fly. I really do. So, if Spurs go for him, if he is available, I know teams are going to go for Mo Kudus. Bowen's only 27 as well, and David Moyes is finally leaving. Uh, if he's available, I would 100% go for him. But we'll see what Spurs do. Spurs being at fifth, they're going to need some work done. They have that Veliz player that they loaned out. Maybe the idea can maybe give him some minutes. Son keeps on at left wing. You don't need to have him at striker anymore. Son had a good season, but I don't think that's what you should do. You need to try to bring someone in and maybe try to bring someone on the right side, and then we'll see what else they do. There's still room for this team to grow. I don't really know how much I trust Dragishin. So in case something happens to Van de Ven again, and they clearly don't have enough under if Adogi goes out or someone like a Pedro Porro, they don't really have enough fullback backup. But all in all, I do think it's not the end of the world for Pochettino. And then with Burnley, we do say goodbye to Vincent Kompany's Burnley. It's probably something we expected, though. After February, they did give it a go. So the only thing you can say is there one thing that he messed up where he could have maybe changed? In hindsight, the decision to drop Trafford. Now, you could argue it could have happened. It should have happened sooner because before that he was making mistakes, and he was the youngest keeper in the league. But Murch came in, and while he made some nice saves himself, he also made some crucial mistakes and cost Burnley some serious points. Uh, the one versus Everton, that gives Everton the one goal that they needed. So maybe that game is 0-0 if Trafford plays, and so that's a point. And gave away a massive had that massive mistake versus uh, I think it was Brighton, where just someone like Sanderberger just like passed it, and the ball just went right under his foot. Now it's not Merch's fault, but it happened, and so that cost you the game versus Brighton. I think you were actually leading at that point. So and you maybe drew versus Brighton, but that was a chance to get 3 points. So that's 4 points already, and then you had the slip up versus Man United. It wasn't necessarily Muric, but Sandberger just passed the ball to Antony, and you allowed Man United to score that way. You could have beaten Man United. Now that was when the game was 0-0, and you were able to get one back with a late PK, but there's just you threw away points when you didn't need to. So I do think Burnley were close. Another thing worth saying is it's not the end of the world. Leicester went down, and they're going to immediately come back up. They'll have Koleosho next year. They've been without him since October. He was kind of exciting. You'll have another year to maybe grow with Odegaard. I don't think Odegaard's done enough to necessarily warrant getting a move as from another team poaching him. But he does look a talent. Uh, and the one thing to say is they lost. They had Ian Matson for them last season. They had Nathan Tella for them last season. All they've done is Nathan Tella has gotten minutes for Xabi Alonso's record-setting Bayern Leverkusen side, so he's good enough for that. And then Ian Matson is going to start for Dortmund in the Champions League final. So just Burnley had that kind of quality, and they weren't really able to replace it. Unfortunate for them. So it's just we'll see how they respond back. I like the idea that it does feel there is a long term kind of outlook in place where they'll keep with company, they'll stick with him, and they'll just make it a long term project essentially. So it seems like they're kind of get game to do with that, and we'll see if they're rewarded with it or not. And so that's two down with Burnley and Sheffield. How is Luton doing? And they were winning. They were with a Sambi Lokanga goal after I think it's Alfie Doughty has a nice little cross to find Lokanga for like 6 minutes into the game. Everything looked quite good, and then Barkley went down, and then that basically sent Luton down. Uh, and then so what happens is I think Jordan Clarkson comes in as the replacement. That's just not like for like kind of player. Clarkson as a little more, I guess, I won't say creativity, but more of a kind of an attacking player. Just kind of played in that pivot spot, and it's just not the same. So what he does is he's trying to find someone. He goes long, just gives it away. Sufal then finds Bowen, and then Bowen's able to just carry the ball all the way up to down the wing. No one's getting close to him. Alfie Dowdy is too late, too lazy to see that Bowen's probably going to have actually cause some trouble, and Bowen gets a cross off. Kaminsky has like a kick save. Maybe Kaminsky could have done better, and then just the ball just finds Ward-Prowse, and Ward-Prowse just has an easy put away. And then they concede the second with having a number of times when they could have cleared a corner kick and they weren't able to do it. And then again, the ball finds Souček, and Souček has kind of a volley to go in, and then West Ham make a save. They sub off Antonio for this George Earthy player, 19-year-old, and pretty cool moment because before this, he had only been able to see the field one time, and his debut like a month or two ago, was against Fulham, and basically got clattered into and suffered a concussion, had to actually be sent to the emergency room or hospital, had to be stretchered off. So pretty cool to see him actually recover, and not only recover, cool for him to come onto the field and get basically a goal with his first touch, and it really comes from just Mo Kudos just having fun, just being able to just being able to have fun in the box. He does a nice little does some step overs, does a cut, and basically beats 3 or 4 players just kind of watching him, not really doing anything. And Kudus is too fast for them, and he's able to get the ball to the byline, and he's able to get the cutback cross before the ball goes out of bounds. Luton are just kind of watching at it, being like, "Oh, this is a good player," and then they find George Earthley making a run to the near post, and he has the touch to go in, and so 3-1 that sends him down. You imagine, and they gave it a go. You can say, but just in the end, they weren't able to defend down the wings. They were poor versus Brentford in that respect as well. And just in the end, that really is gonna be it. Luton had gave us some fun moments through the year, towards after like February or January. But the fun moments were just because they were good at scoring. They were they were good at attacking. Probably the most fun game in the entire year was that 4-4 game versus Newcastle, but it was 4-4. Newcastle were also good at attacking their back line, and that is going to be unfortunately what sends them down. They just weren't good enough defending, and that sometimes is where it comes from. Is you need to be able to you need to be able to basically defend crosses, and you need to be able to just defend without the ball. One of the reasons why Sean Dyche and Everton are not going to go down is he recognizes that, and so it is it's not necessarily like Rob Edwards doesn't recognize that. It's just he didn't have players that were good enough at that. There was that moment versus Everton just a couple of weeks ago, where if Luton had actually beaten Everton, they maybe would have been able to control their fate. Uh, and unfortunately for them, they just couldn't defend a corner kick. I think it was Minky. Minky started to get a little handsy, and he got lucky earlier not giving a PK, and then he actually did give a PK, but just not being able to defend a corner kick. And Mingy wasn't necessarily good in this game either. Berkey wasn't good at the back. They didn't have good enough center backs, and unfortunately for them, they probably their best center back was Tom Locklear, and they lost him to that cardiac arrest uh, incident back in November. And just maybe you can say is they could have tried to bring someone in January. I don't remember them actually doing any business in the transfer market. You don't really know what their finances are. They just spent to renovate their whole stadium as well. So it is unfortunate, but that's just kind of where we are. I mean, West Ham really did pump them. 24 shots, 8 on target. Luton just 4 and 1. But really, the stats just don't really tell it because the game changed after Ross Barkley went off. Uh, and then just with West Ham, Kudus and Bowen just kind of just two men stars. Basically, they just ran the show. And then Sufal looked like he had a little bit more of an advanced role. It didn't seem like Luton were able to kind of cover him. So sometimes it was Sufal making a run, or Bowen, or Kudus on that side. It was too much for them to deal with. And so for West Ham, what does Moyes have for the final day of the year? Does he get a sending off? Does he get some kind of fancy farewell to help Arsenal? We'll have to see. And that is kind of all she wrote for Luton. Uh, just couldn't get it can sustain enough ball pressure on the couple of the goals. Didn't seem like they could find Adebayo or Morris to even force saves. And so yeah, just you gotta defend and the box to stay up basically, and they just weren't. So we'll see what they do next season. Just unfortunate for them as well. Injuries did kill them. Maybe if even if Adebayo had been able to stay up, maybe that would have been enough. But it is what it is. And so 2 good results really did go Nottingham Forest's way, so they didn't really have to do a whole lot. And, that works because they nearly went through, uh, euphoria and then, like, nightmare. So, they did go on to lose 2-3, to Chelsea. Chelsea getting the first goal with Mudryk. Mudryk came on, and, had a really nice run, beautiful find, by Cole Palmer, just kind of, threaded in. Then Mudryk has a really nice run to cut across and get the shot off, finds the corner. Magic looks a player. Just it just feels he's very still raw, but just that kind of pace is something else, and it just feels like Chelsea have used it that much. And then Bale was able to make it all square, and then Callum Hudson-Odoi made it 2-1 after he cut inside, beat past Malo Gusto. You knew what he was going to do even right before this. He had actually hit the post a couple of times. Nottingham Forest hit the post like 3 or 4 times in that second half. And then Pochettino made some changes. Sterling came on, and Sterling scored a similar goal from the left side. And then Jackson was able to win it after after Reece James came on and had a really nice cross himself. And I mean it was nice that Nottingham Forest didn't necessarily have to win this game to to stay up. Uh, Considering how they capitulated a little bit in the second half, it seemed. Uh, Nuno actually started with like a 5-4-1 formation, and almost switched to basically because he brought on Anthony Elanga. It almost looked like they went back to like a 4-2-3-1 kind of shape. Gave Gibbs White a little more freedom to kind of play as a 10, but that did kind of expose them a little bit more at the back end. And it was either Hudson Odoi or someone. Maybe it was Gibbs White. Someone got lost with Reece James. Someone. So the fullback Oli Aina was really concerned with Marlo Gusto, and then Reece James just kind of makes a run, and Casado plays it. No one recognizes it, and Reece James is wide open. You don't want Reece James to have that kind of time on the ball. He can send in a really good ball, and he did. And Jackson was there at the near post, and no one's able to mark him. So uh, it was a. I mean, you could throw out the score line. It was because it was still a party because of what happened. Before that. I mean, Forest with 20 shots to Chelsea's 12. Only 4 on target. Chelsea did have 5. More Chris Wood problems. There are a couple of times where Chris Wood probably could have done a little bit better, but Forest is going to stay up, and that's all they really cared about. They brought in Nuno for that reason, and so. But to get started with Chelsea, second half subs worked. I think you're starting to see how Caicedo can function for them. He's starting to spray the ball around a lot better. He's always been good at winning it back, but he started to really fly for them towards the end of the month. Uh, and Cuckoo got some minutes, and we saw him yesterday. And Chelsea is going to be a different team with Cuckoo next year, and just that injury really did kind of put a a wrench into I think what Pochettino's plans were, or I guess Chelsea's plans were, uh, because they have missed him. He makes very good decisions in the final third, and that's been an area where they've struggled. So Sterling on the bench, don't really get why we haven't seen him for the last month. He looked quite good when he came on, and Nicholas Jackson finally started to find a little form down the stretch. Now he did have a poor game yesterday, but as far as a target man, I think he's going to end with 14 goals, 14 or 15 goals for his first season. That's not the worst return, to be honest. Hoyland, I think, is going to end on 14 goals as well. That's for the first year. That's not the worst return. Everyone's going to compare it to Holland. You just can't. That's just not fair to those players. Uh, I think his link of play could maybe be improved when he drops the ball. He also he can refine his decision making as well. But for someone that's a willing runner, he makes chances just by his runs. It's not the worst idea to have. Now we'll see what they do in the summertime. They also spent like 40 million for him as opposed to the 80. Now Hoyland did cost a lot, so that's the only negative there. But Chelsea went cheap at least for the striker. We'll see what they do in the summertime. Apparently they might actually be able to spend in the summertime when I didn't really think that. So apparently they made some accounting gimmicks with selling a hotel and training ground to themselves essentially to make up some income. But we'll see if that's allowed, and we'll see what they do next season. They might have Europe football after all, and when it looked like they were going to probably be closer to finishing in 10th. So they really have found some form towards the end of the year, and we'll see what they do next year as well. Now, no Thiago Silva next year, but they will have Wesley Fofana back. You imagine? We'll see how they are as far as the back line. I don't really know if I trust Diazy and Batashili. Now it has been interesting. We haven't seen Diazy for the last few games, and that's when they've actually gone on this little run. So I don't know if he was maybe the square peg in the hole. It has been interesting to see them stick with Petrovic, even though uh, uh, the uh, the Brighton keeper had returned, Robert Sanchez. So maybe the idea is Petrovic again next year. Uh, we a lot of this has happened when Enzo has been out. So it's been interesting to see Enzo and Casado kind of clash when Casado and Gallagher haven't, but they might have. There's been talks that they were going to sell Gallagher. So there's a lot of ways for this to really change. And the thing to say is this is a team that just all of a sudden has been you look and Cole Palmer has like 22, 23 goals, and not in open play, but just 23 goals in the league, and you just wonder how. It, it is remarkable how this season started with Cole Palmer getting the lone goal for Man City in the Community Shield, and then he got the lone goal for Man City in the Super Cup. and help Man City at least win the Super Cup. I think they lost to Arsenal in the Community Shield, and Man City were like, "You're not good enough. We'll give you to Chelsea." And this guy has shown up, and I don't know. He's not only is he going to get a start or get call up for Southgate, maybe he actually gets minutes this summer for England. He has just really, just in 1 year, just really blown up. And whatever Chelsea do going forward, it's going to be through Cole Palmer's like lens. They're going to try to build around him, which understandable. So, the reason why they've been on this kind of stretch is really been him as well. They've started to build the team around him and and Cole Palmer has used Jackson's runs ahead to kind of create a little bit for him as well. So it has been it hasn't been the disaster season that maybe people were expecting for Chelsea, even though it did start a disastrous. So maybe Pochettino gets a break and maybe he does return next year. Uh, and then with Nottingham Forest. Yeah, the thing was, you hired Nuno to keep you up, and he's going to. Might be the skin of your teeth, but he's going to. I don't think Steve Cooper would have. I just felt they were going in the wrong direction with Cooper. It made sense to make the change when they did. I think I said it in real time when it happened, and just I mean Nuno's a pragmatic matter as well, and just they looked lifeless under Cooper in a way where Nuno's gotten some goals, some purple patches out of Chris Wood. He's Morgan Gibbs White has found his form since Nuno's arrived. So is Caleb Hudson-Odoi, and Hudson-Odoi, that really is the story of the game. It was cool to see him score versus his old team. His fans were Chelsea fans have been kind of going at him in a little bit, giving him some stick, but he ruptured his Achilles, so it takes some time to recover from that. Hudson-Odoi went to Germany, went to Leverkusen. Actually, I don't know if it was Alonso was Leverkusen, but went to Leverkusen and had a really bad loan spell. I don't think he had any kind of goal involvements for a whole year, and people were wondering if he was going to be a bust. When he came to Nottingham Forest, no one knew what to expect, and it's really cool to see him actually end on I think 8 goals or so. Uh, and he's really had an enjoyable month. And he's still young, so we'll see what he offers next year as well. I mean, I really like when he cuts inside. You know what he's going to do, uh, but he's good at doing it. He's good at getting the ball onto his from the left side, getting the ball onto his right foot. But he's quick at getting the shot off. That's like the main thing. He doesn't second guess himself. Now maybe it's predictable, but even with it being predictable, you've got to block it. And so if you have someone like an Oleana, making an overlap run, you're not going to be able to defend both. So it might be a one trick pony, but it's still a trick, and it's very effective. So the only thing to say, I guess, with the end is Jay Reyna, did a little low move as well, and he didn't get many minutes. It did not really work out for him. For a U.S. perspective, the moves to the Premier League from Gio Reyna and Tyler Adams did not really work out for Greg Berhalter, and the U.S. team. So I guess you can say they'll be well rested if they do play in the Copa. I hope Gio Reyna starts for a Copa. We'll have to. Gio Reyna's been the best player for the last few windows when he has played for the U.S. In fact, when he's been subbed off, that's actually when the U.S. have struggled. But, as far as the club minutes go, it did not work out. It hasn't, maybe Gio Reyna could have moved elsewhere. Now he wasn't playing for Dortmund either. But but it's not the end of the world. Weston McKennie had a loan move to Leeds. Didn't really work out, and he's turned around and had a fantastic season for Juventus. I don't really know what Brendan Aronson did at Union Berlin, but it's not the end of the world. Uh, and we'll just see. Maybe he'll be well rested and well motivated to perform for Copa. But it has been. I don't think it's even a thing of Nuno doesn't want to play him or doesn't rate him. He came to a team that was facing relegation where Nuno didn't really have a chance to really experiment that much, and Gio Reyna plays in a position that Morgan Gibbs White plays in, and you're not going to that his Gibbs White's team basically. He's almost he's a captain on the field if not actually wearing the armband. Like he is there everything. So it was just unlucky in that respect, but. And they are going to stay up with the skin of the teeth, but at the same time, with the points deduction, and the points deduction was lame. They're going to get hit because they sold Brennan Johnson by like a month late, essentially, and they were forced to sell Brennan Johnson, and it's just Yeah, it's Nottingham Forest. Yeah, they spent a lot of money, but Chelsea spent like $1 billion. It's not Nottingham Forest spending like 150 million after being promoted. Chelsea spent $1 billion in like 2 years. I think it's shambolic, to be honest. So they were hit with a 5 points deductions, and so 29 points, 34 points. Maybe they win their next game versus Burnley, which isn't out of the blue. 37 points to stay up. That probably would have been average. People have kind of been going a little bit about that. So I just think in general, it's been well, I guess 30 points for the point for them. It still would have been 29 to stay up. So it has been a down year for the three promoted sets. I think it is the lowest to survive that they've said in a while, and uh, a year after all three promoted sides did stay up. So and that's kind of just where we are. The other games, Newcastle and Brighton, 1-1. Beltman and Longstaff for the two goals. Brighton just look a bit of a mess. Brighton just kind of trying to end the season. No Yao Pedro this game. Danny Welbeck isn't the striker that they need. I don't think Brunette helps them out that much. They could probably use a loan for him. The Brighton will enjoy having Mitoma, having Enciso actually healthy next year, having Selly Marsh, having El Pedro, maybe Evan Ferguson. If not, you need to go out and probably get a striker. They probably need to improve the back line. Lewis Dunk and Veltman and not Veltman, Lewis Dunk and Ben Hecke and Adam Webster just not necessarily good enough. You need to find a way to maybe improve that a little bit. It's been a shame that we haven't seen since Bill Gilmore and Pascal Gross returned. You haven't seen Carlos Baliba get minutes the last few games, and then at fullback, it's been a who's who of trying anyone that's been healthy. Whether it's Veltman, whether it's Ugo Julio, whether it's this Valentin Barco guy who played yesterday versus Chelsea. Because Lamptey has been out. Noah Stupian as well. So just Brighton have been just a mess, and I think it's been a remarkable job just for De Zerbi to keep them where they can possibly even finish top of the table. Uh, if not, maybe they finish like 11th or 12th. It's not the end of the year because they had injury issues and problems where this team easily could have been where Brentford and Everton were in the table. So we'll see. I think it seems to be talks that actually that De Zerbi is going to stay. So I think that's pretty exciting for the league. And if what they've pocketed so much money. They sold Casado, didn't really spend it last year. They've pocketed so much money with these player sales the last few years. It'd be nice if they actually go out and actually do spend it a little bit. Uh, it's worth saying the Foddy loan didn't work out, unfortunately. So there's a lot of ways for this Brighton team to change too. And then with Eddie Howe and Newcastle, they got into some pretty good situations. It's unlucky for them to only get a point here. They probably did deserve a little bit more. 18 shots and 7 on target, 4 big chances for them. Uh, Brighton did have 3 chances as well. But the interesting thing was Newcastle outpossessed and outpassed Brighton, De Zerbi's Brighton. And they did it when Brighton got the first goal. So it's not easy to do. Usually Brighton can actually control the game a little bit. And that just shows you it's Brighton aren't what they were last year. Welbeck doesn't really offer you, the runs in behind. Welbeck, they don't really have. They got some good stuff out of Semyon Adingra, but you can still see he's young, he's still raw as well. It's just they don't have, they were missing, someone like a Yao Pedro to offer some legs. So they didn't have ways to just play over the press. Newcastle were doing a pretty decent job to turn them over, and doing a good job to keep it themselves. And that's not something that Eddie Howe's always used to usually get at. And the only thing you can say is uh, Newcastle were getting into pretty good spots, and it's just lacking a little bit with the finishing. So someone like a Callum Wilson probably would have scored a couple goals here. So they just missed that, and that's kind of the one thing to talk about here is. I mean, yeah, Newcastle did, to their credit, didn't allow Brighton to have 600 passes, just kind of kill the game out. They made Brighton work. Uh, I thought, and let's see, the one thing to say is it's been kind of a what if for Newcastle, but kind of both ways, like the positives and negatives. So when you look back, Eddie Howe, when Eddie Howe had all those injuries, he couldn't press the way he wanted. The back line was slow and susceptible to runs in behind. Uh, and it's just kind of like what if would have happened without maybe those injuries, and maybe another thing too is they did get some positive contributions this year with from Elliot Anderson in a couple of games, Lewis Miley as well, Lewis Hall and Livramento. But they need to improve their center back pairing this summer. Now, Tosin might be available on a free from Fulham. Dan Burn and Botman and Scherer regressed, in my opinion, this year. And Botman was coming off an injury. Scherer actually had a pretty decent season, all things considered. He just wasn't able to carry the back line by himself. But they need to find a way to improve that because of the way that Eddie Howe plays. He likes pressing. He likes the center backs playing in a high line. They just weren't able to do it this whole year, and they need to find a way to improve on the striker spot. Because it's one thing to have Ishak, but I think they're better when they have two with Ishak with someone. And so the one thing I was thinking about is how I mean, yeah, you need to improve the back line, but is there a way to go out and maybe get a second striker? I know they were linked to someone named Ugo Adekite back in before he went to PSG when he was someone in France. He's still only 22, 21 years old, and I looked. He's scored 3 or 4 goals for his last four or 5 games for Frankfurt. He's 6'3". I wonder if maybe they look at maybe bringing someone like him, or they try to bring in like a second guy where they don't have to just be reliant on Callum Wilson, because that is the problem. Is Wilson's like 31, 32, and he's just never available. He plays one game, he looks good, and then he gets something, gets a knock again, and he can't go. He can't go versus Brighton, and he can't go versus Man United, and they really could have used him for both those games. So all in all, though, given the way how they were back in November and January, how they were sliding, how they had all those injury problems, it's been a very good season for Eddie Howe, and you just hope it doesn't end bittersweet where they actually do kind of miss out on Europe, or they didn't miss out on Europa, because they did have a chance to finish sixth. They just controlled their fate, and they've let a couple games slide now because of that. And then with Brighton, let's see, Brighton also so they get the point here, but they lost to 2 yesterday to Chelsea. The Caicedo and Cucurella return game to the Amex. Uh, Brighton at least were interesting, but they weren't really able to offer any kind of threat. Yao Pedro at least was back for that game, and he probably was their most lively player. Brighton were lively in the second half, but at the same time, Gross had a bad miss to make it 1-1, and then Nkunku had a nice little finish to make it 2-0. And then they got one back at the very end with Welbeck, I think getting a header, but it was a little too late. They didn't just have enough of a threat. So again, just Brighton without Evan Ferguson the entire year. That's another thing too. I mentioned how uh, it feels like the Man United Arsenal game was like a year ago or a lifetime ago. When Brighton played Newcastle back in October or September, Evan Ferguson had a hat trick. It's like the only game Evan Ferguson like featured in. And it's just Sandro Tonali played in that game for Newcastle. It's just it really has been unfortunate for Brighton that Evan Ferguson just wasn't able to feature at all, and he's quite a talent still. It's just I don't he had knee issues or growing issues, and they just decided to not risk it, which makes sense. It makes sense for the player to so it's good on their part in that respect that they are looking after the player. It's just unfortunate, I guess for the neutral for the fan that he wasn't able to go, or they weren't able to play someone that was like similar to him. Uh, and then just see Wolves and Crystal Palace will kind of end towards the end. Wolves and Crystal Palace. Wolves do lose 3-1. It's the Michael Elise and Eze show. And then Mateta was able to get one as well. So it's Elise, Mateta, and then Cunha. But Elise was quite special. But both Elise and Eze were special. And Eze got the third. So Elise basically has a wonderful curler for the first goal, and then he has a little flick finish to find Nicholas or Nathaniel Klein, who's like the center back. So it was interesting to see him actually make the run, be the additional man into the box. So a little cheeky there. Klein had a shot that just banked off the post, and then Mateta was there for the tap in. So 2-0 all of a sudden, and then Mateus Cunha made it 2-1. Wolves actually had the better of the chances, I thought, in the second half. Looked like they maybe even had a chance to get back into the game, and then lo and behold, their high line was kind of beaten by. I think it's Eze. Eze runs behind Max Kilman, and Olise is able to play it with a nice little vision on his part, and there you go, 3-1. Uh, Crystal Palace were not as flying as they've been recently, but they also lost Will Hughes to start the game, so there could have been maybe some of that. Uh, Wolves Wolves really did play better in the second half. I mean, they finished with 14 shots versus 13. Wolves with the majority of possession. Crystal Palace only 253 passes and at 73% accuracy, just 33% possession. Uh, it was I don't know if necessarily it was the Hughes miss or not. Amahada came in. It didn't seem necessarily he was the same player, but he had the touch that actually created the third goal. To be fair, but also Amahada got sent off towards the end with a late card. So if nothing else, it's been fun to just see Oliver Glasnow's Crystal Palace, and it's not just someone like me noticing. It's apparently Bayern Munich has been noticing. They've been they were at least sniffing around. Looks like Bayern Munich might actually stick with Tuchel for another season, but that just says what Crystal Palace did to bring in someone like a Glasnow. They they not only made the decision to get rid of Hodgson, they brought in someone that has come around and made buzz in Europe as well. So pretty cool, exciting stuff. And we got one more game to see Olize and Eze at least in a Palace shirt, and they play. Uh, it's either Spur. They play Aston Villa. So Aston Villa doesn't really have anything to play for. And we'll see what Palace do for that if people watch that game. I think everyone's going to be watching Arsenal or Man City back to back. And then with Wolves, it's one of those where Ari O'Neill is just happy happy to be able to have nothing to play for, towards the end. Mateus Cunha on 12 goals for the year. That's pretty good for him, for someone that hasn't been known for necessarily his finishing. He's been much better for them when he's been able to go. And just I think the Wolves kind of struggled after they lost Craig Dawson at the back line, and we'll see what they do towards the end of the year. Toddy Gomez has been like a positive, you can say. So that's been they started the season given Brentford Nathan Collins, and I think Toddy Gomez has actually been the better one of the better defenders, at least as far as they didn't necessarily miss Collins, you can say. But there's a lot of work to do with this Wolves team because it does feel very incomplete, especially any kind of injury to to the players that we saw. They did struggle. So that's they started the season firing their coach and basically or hiring their coach like 5 days before the season started. So really was a remarkable job by Gary O'Neill. And then with Brentford and Bournemouth, we'll end with and then we'll end with Everton and Sheffield. Brentford do go on to beat Bournemouth 2-1 with Embremo getting a goal very late, and then Solanke was able to beat Ethan Pennick in the air, and then Weissa at the very end made it 2-1. Really nice little counter moment by Brentford. It looks like Thomas Frank made some subs in the second half, brought on was it Weissa? Yeah, I think brought on Weissa for Lewis Potter, brought on Jensen for Norgard, and it just seemed Brentford were and brought on I think Kevin Shada. It just seemed like Brentford were a little more and Mads Roslov for Ayer. Just seemed like Brentford were a little bit better, going forward a little bit in the second half. Uh, I think the interesting thing was Tony probably had the best chance in the second half, and instead of trying to go for goal himself, or even like he had in Bremen for a square ball, he just kind of tried to buy a PK and didn't get it. Probably could have gotten it. I think the call kind of went against him, was unlucky, but at the same time, Tony didn't run this game, and you understand it because with the Euros coming up, he doesn't really want to risk doing his hamstring in, but the final game of the year, there's no reason to really play him. I was kind of upset he actually got started in this game, as well, because you need to see what Kevin Shada can do leading the line, or Wiza. Wiza and Embremo actually play quite well together, to be honest, and it's just interesting to see how Tony getting the start. It was Lewis Potter instead of Wiza. Wiza didn't even start the game. When Wiza came on, they actually looked better. So that's worth saying as well. And then with Bournemouth a little unlucky. Maybe lucky in respect that you didn't get the PK call against you with Tony kind of falling down, but at the same time, Solanke scored 2 goals that possibly could have stood. Semenyo was called for a handball in a build-up. Didn't really affect the play that much. Brentford stopped playing, but that was kind of their fault. And then there was like a late kind of early whistle on is it either Ayer or Collins, where Solanke was able to turn them in, got the shot away. Flecken was beaten, and just the early whistle prevented that goal from counting. And so Solanke deserves a goal, and he did get it at the very end, but it wasn't enough. 4 big chances for Brentford, 13 shots for Bournemouth, 11 for Brentford. Brentford did have a majority of the ball, but 290 passes versus 270 for Bournemouth. That's been the problem for Bournemouth, is they just haven't been able to keep the ball this entire year. Very good going forward, but they just haven't really had any kind of idea of what to do with the ball in possession. So I think going forward, they need to kind of figure that out. The only thing to say with Bournemouth towards the end is maybe a negative is Tyler Adams was able to get onto the field, so that was positive, but he didn't look good. Actually, towards the last 2 goals that Brentford, or the 2 goals that Brentford scored, Tyler Adams just wasn't really moving. It was so that's kind of not great because he ball watching for both really, and so there you go. That's kind of where we are with that. And then let's see, Everton and Sheffield. Uh, Everton do go on to beat Sheffield 1-0 thanks to a goal from Decore. Nice little play with Calvin Lewin and Decore. Probably could have scored a couple more. Not really much to talk about the game. Really, nothing involved it. Nothing really mattered with it. So I don't need to really spend much time on it. I don't need to talk about Sheffield anymore. And so that's kind of where we are. That's the final or the second to final week of the season, and we're back for Championship Sunday to talk about it as well. And then I'll try to do a preview a little bit with the FA final, and then I'll try to do a Champions League final preview. And so until then, you stay squatty and stop recording.